The cheapest bed in Gravenford costs nothing, and you pay for it with your back. Mine was the third bench from the vending machines, 2 nights on it. On the third afternoon, I fed 2 quarters into the payphone and called my parents' house. One night, I said, on the floor, gone before anybody's up. Eli? My cousin Julian brightened on the word. He can do that on no notice. Hey, where are you calling from? The bus station. Oh man, that's rough. Julian is 24. He has slept in my old room for 5 years, and he answers that phone like a man answering his own. So ask them, I said. They're out. Back late. Then take a message. One night. I can do that, he said. Then he didn't hang up. And that is where the real thing came out. Eli, I'm going to say this because nobody else will. It isn't your house to ask about anymore. You walked out 5 years ago. You don't get to take 5 years off and then call the floor yours. He said it kindly. That is the part. No smirk in it. Nothing sharp. A reasonable man explaining a reasonable thing. I asked for one night, I said. I know, and if I take it to them, it turns into a whole thing again. And Aunt Connie hasn't slept right since March. Call me next week. We'll figure something out. Don't tell them I called, I said. Okay, he said, and said it fast. Relief has a sound. He made it. The call cost 40 cents. The machine kept the dime. I had $186. I know the number because I counted it 4 times on that bench, which is what you do when counting is the last part of your life still working. The restaurant closed in April. The owner burned the books behind the loading dock and left the country owing 7 of us 6 weeks' pay. Nobody hires out of a kitchen that ends like that. The flat was in Nadia's name. It always had been. She kept it and the good pans, and she was decent about all of it, which was worse. You cannot be angry at decent. The rack by the ticket windows holds a free housing sheet, printed Tuesdays, mostly lies. Rooms started at $600. Then, at the bottom of the back page, one line. 4B Foxglove Court. 1 bedroom, $1 a month, utilities included. Apply Pell, 22 Carrick Street. $1 is a typo, but a typo still has an address, and walking is free. 22 Carrick Street had a brass plate rubbed down to the ghost of a name. Inside it smelled of paper kept warm for decades, cold iron, and a pipe nobody had lit since before I was born. Mr. Pell was 81. I learned that later. What I saw was a very old man in an oatmeal cardigan, behind a ledger the size of a paving slab, not reading it. I'm here about 4B, I said. He didn't ask which building. Sit down. Is it $1? Yes. $1 a month? Yes. Utilities. Heat, water, power included. Why? He looked up at me then. That isn't a question about the flat. Is there a catch? There is a clause. He turned the lease round, set one finger under a line, and left it there so that I had to read it off the page myself. The tenant will not complain about the resident. I laughed. It came out louder than I meant. The resident, I said. Yes. Somebody lives in it. Yes. In 4B. Yes. Do I share a bathroom? No. Does the resident have a key? The resident doesn't need one. I decided the resident was a cat. What counts as complaining? I said. Complaining. To who? To me. To the neighbors. To anyone. In the building or out of it. And if I do, then the lease ends and you go. The deposit is $150, he said. Refundable. Can it be $100? No. Has anybody ever had it back? It has been refunded before. How many times? More than once. $186. $150 of it on deposit, $1 for the first month, $35 left in my pocket. 9 days of rice, eggs, and onions. A bed at the hostel on Ward Street is $20 a night when they have one, and they never have one on a Friday. The deposit was refundable. The bench was not. I signed the lease. He watched me do it without a word, which is strange in a man being handed money, then pressed the page under a blotter instead of waving it dry. The room was quiet enough to hear a radiator that wasn't running. My name went into his ledger, under a column of other names in other inks. Then he asked his only question, and it wasn't about money. Do you cook? I did, I said. Since I was 17. Good. Mr. Pell said, and gave me the key. Foxglove Court is a brick block behind an iron railing, 4 floors, 9 flats, with boarded shop fronts along its back. The courtyard had been swept. 1 window in the whole building was lit. The stairwell was empty in a way that has a sound to it. Every landing light worked. No post on the mats, no bikes by the doors. 4 flights, and my boots were the only noise in the building. On the second landing, a door opened before I reached it, and a very old woman came out with a plate in her hands and a saucer turned upside down on top of it. You're the new one, she said. Eli. I heard boots. She pushed the plate into my hands. She did not hand it to me. There is a difference, and my arms took it before the rest of me agreed. Eat it on the stairs, she said. I don't have chairs. She had chairs. Then eat it and go back tonight to wherever you came from. There's a hostel on Ward Street. I signed a lease, I said. 11 people signed that lease. I asked what happened to them. They left, she said. All 11. In the night, most of them. One went down these stairs in his socks, and I never saw the man again. His shoes stayed up there a year. Because of what? I said. Because they didn't like it, she said. She wasn't keeping a story back. She was refusing to make one. Nobody in this building tells stories about 4B, she said. That should tell you something about the building. What's your name? Okafor, she said, and shut the door. I ate it standing on the landing. Rice, chicken, a red stew with more thyme in it than I would have used. And she was right and I was wrong. The key turned like it had been oiled that morning. I had my shoulder set for a door that hadn't opened in years. It swung. The cold came up the stairs behind me and stopped at the doorway. The flat was warm. Not the stale warm of a shut room. This was kitchen warm. An hour after service warm, with somebody still standing in it. One room, a kitchen along the wall, a bathroom with a window, no dust on the sill. The tap ran hot in 4 seconds, a bed frame and no mattress, which was fine. This wood was mine for $1. I put my coat on the floor and my thin blanket over it, and I was gone before I could get suspicious about anything. I woke once because I was too warm. That had not been one of my problems in a while. There was a second blanket over me, wool, heavy, smelling of cedar and cold air, tucked under my feet by somebody who does that on purpose. The chain was on the door. I had put it there. The window was latched from inside. I lay with my hand flat on the wool a long time. Then I went back to sleep. I would like to say I did something braver, but I was warm, and my body voted without me. In daylight, the second blanket was still a blanket. $18 at the thrift on Ward Street. More if the wool was real. The wool was real. There was no cupboard in that flat. I went out and spent $4.80 on rice, eggs, onions, oil, and a bag of chicken backs, which left $30.20. I walked home past 2 restaurants without going in. The pan on the stove had a lid on it when I got back. I had not left a pan on the stove. I lifted the lid with the handle of a wooden spoon, standing well back from it, like an idiot. Rice, cooked properly, the grains separate. Tomato, onion taken down past the point most people have the patience for, and half a chicken. I had bought backs and necks for $1.60. Backs and necks are not a bird. A bird like that runs $8 around here, and I had not spent $8 on anything. It was hot, not warm. Food does not stay hot on its own for an hour. My jacket was over the chair where I'd dropped it. The elbow was shut. So was the pocket seam I had been meaning to deal with since March. The thread was wrong. Not badly wrong. Wrong for now. Waxed, thicker than anything a shop sells today, gone the color of weak tea. The stitches were small and even and slanted, and the back of the work was as tidy as the front. I put on the mended jacket and stood in the middle of a rented room in it, and could not think of one sensible thing to do next. So I went down 2 flights and knocked. Mrs. Okafor opened her door on the chain. "Was that you?" I said. "In my flat. I have not been above the 2nd floor in 9 years. Somebody cooked in it. Then don't eat it. Did you put a blanket over me?" "Young man," she said. "I am 78. "Then who?" "Nobody. Go home." The knife roll was on the counter where I had left it. It was not tied the way I tie it. I have tied that same knot since I was 19, and I have never once thought about it while doing it. I had let those knives go. 2 months without work does that. Rust freckles on the carbon steel. Tape unwinding off the petty knife. Old oil down the canvas from a bad night in April. The canvas had been washed. The tape was rewound. 7 of the 8 blades had been honed. Not sharpened. Honed. Your hand knows the difference before your eye gets there. The 8th was the bread knife, chipped at the tip by a frozen loaf and a cheap countertop. Nobody had touched it. You cannot bring a chipped tip back on a stone, and anyone who has tried knows it inside a minute. Luck cleans none of them. A kind neighbor cleans all 8. Whoever had been in my flat knew which blade was past saving, left it alone, and put it back in its own slot in the roll. I sat down on the floor. That is the part I keep coming back to. Not the blanket, not the bird in the pan, the slot. I could break the lease, and Mr. Pell would hand back $150. That is 7 nights at Ward Street, and on the 8th, I am on a bench again with nothing left to count. 2 days ago, I asked a house I grew up in for 1 night on its floor. The answer was no. It was polite, it was correct, and it was still no. Nobody had asked this flat anything. It had answered twice anyway. I stayed a 2nd night. Everything I owned that mattered fit in 1 sentence. A lease. $150 I could not get back without leaving. A line about not complaining. $1 was the figure on the page. It was not the price. I lay under the 2nd blanket and did not know what the rest of the price was. only that there was one. The landing light outside my door was burning when I lay down. Sometime later, it went out without a click, the way a light goes out when somebody has decided you are asleep. I did not get up to look. On the fourth morning, I did the stupid thing on purpose. I stood in the middle of a room I pay $1 a month for and said thank you, house, out loud to a cupboard. A tap dripped. Testing a kitchen is not a mystical business. You change one thing and keep everything else the same. So before I went out, I left 3 things behind me. A $5 bill flat on the counter, the frying pan dirty in the sink, a pound of dried beans in water, unpicked, stones and all. Then 4 kitchens, Ward Street and Halligan Road, on buses that cost $5.90 I did not have to spend on being told no. 2 said no through the pass without putting the knife down. The 3rd took my name for a list he keeps in his head. The 4th came out to look at me. You were at the Ardmore, he said. 6 weeks, nobody paid. That isn't on you. It wasn't. He wanted me nowhere near his walk-in anyway. Home at 4. The $5 bill was where I left it, and it was still $5. The pan was clean and dry on a hook I had not yet decided was its hook. The beans had been picked over. 7 small stones sat in a line beside the bowl, evenly spaced, none of them touching. Not a thief then. Luck does not sort. That night, I cooked the way I cook when it matters. Beans, an onion taken all the way down, the last of the chicken backs. Time I did not have. Then I laid 2 places. There was a plate set for 2 on that table, and I had done it myself, and nobody asked me to. I put the good spoon at the other place. There is 1 good spoon in that flat. Halfway down the bowl, the chair opposite came back from the table 2 inches and stopped. No scrape. The distance a chair moves when somebody sits into it and settles. Nothing else happened. I said the beans would have been better with tomatoes, and then I finished them, and I have eaten in worse company. The 2nd plate was cold when I cleared it, not room cold. Cold like a plate carried in from a yard in winter. The fork had been turned face down. Next morning, I took a bowl of it to Mrs. Okafor. You do not eat off a woman's plate and give her nothing back. She looked at the bowl like it might be a bill. I made it, I said. You made it up there. Yes. She took it anyway. Too much time, she said through the gap a minute later. That was your recipe, then you did it wrong. Then, I asked what I had come down for. Do the doors in this building ever stick? In the wet, in the heat, ever? She held that bowl and said nothing for a long time. Nothing in this building sticks, she said. Nobody has ever been called out to a lock here. Then, go while you still care which shoes you are wearing. And she shut her door. On the 6th night, I stopped being clever. I packed the duffel, put it on my shoulder, and laid my hand flat on the front door. I was not leaving. I want that clear. Every door in 4B locked in the same second. The front door under my hand, the bathroom, both cupboards, the pantry, the window latch over the sink, the iron flap on the meter box. 1 sound, not 6. Then the cold. It did not come in from anywhere. The heat left that room the way water leaves a sink, and my breath showed in a flat where the tap runs hot in 4 seconds. Then the smell. Lilies, close and heavy. The way a room smells when flowers have stood in water 2 days. There was not a flower in that flat. There has never been one in it. 4 seconds, maybe 5. Then the warm came back all at once, the way an oven comes back when you shut it, and the locks let go one after another, unhurried. The duffel was still on my shoulder. On the table behind me, there was a plate set for 2, both places laid, and it had not been there when I put my hand on that door. She spoke from the middle of the room, not a corner, not under a floorboard. A woman's voice at the volume you use across a table when you expect an answer. You signed, she said. I said I signed a lease. She said, you signed. A lease is paper with $1 on it, I said. She said, you live here now. No heat in it. No apology in it. What happens if I go? I asked. The room took its time. I could hear the pipes, and the gate down in the courtyard, and my own pulse in the ear still against the door. She said, tenants who leave me do not come back. There are 2 ways to hear that, and I heard both at once, in the dark, with a bag on my shoulder. Men have threatened me before. Professionals, with a hand on the walk-in door and a pleasant face on. It sounded nothing like that. It sounded like somebody who has watched that door shut 11 times. So I put the bag down and said a number, which is all I am good for in a room I do not control. $150 of mine sits in Mr. Pell's ledger. On Tuesday, that money was a way out. With my breath still showing, it had stopped being one, and we both knew it. So I stay, I said. Not because of the doors? 4 kitchens looked at me today, so take the flattery out of it. And it is still a yes, and I want one rule. In every kitchen I have worked, there is a list inside a door, and the first line is the one nobody argues with. No door in this place closes on me, not for a second. Not to make a point, not to hold me in a room while you think it over. I have to be able to walk out on the nights I don't. No, she said, one word, flat, the way you refuse a price. I asked why not, carefully, because complaining ends the lease, and I have read that line enough to hear it in his voice. Doors are what I have, she said. I thought about a landing light going out without a click, and a stairwell where nothing sticks, and I said neither of them out loud. Then take mine too, I said. Both ways. Nothing here gets held shut on either of us, and that includes the chain on that front door, which does nothing to you. It is not a lock. It is a message, and I will stop sending it. The quiet lasted long enough for the beans to go cold. Then, say the whole of it again. So I said it again. No door in this flat is held shut on either of us. She said, that one. Write it down. She meant with a pencil somewhere it stays. There was one in the drawer with the string and the fuses. I wrote it inside the cupboard door over the kettle, in capitals, the way you write for a night shift. Rule 1. No door in this flat is held shut on either of us. Under it, I put my initials, because I have signed off a sheet at the end of every shift since I was 17. The cupboard closed on my own handwriting, once, gently. The chain came off the front door and went into the drawer with the fuses. Then I ate cold beans standing up and laughed once, at nothing, in a flat that was not empty. In the morning, the pencil was back on that shelf, sharpened, square to the edge. I asked what I should call her. Nothing came back, and nothing has come back the 2 times I have asked since. On the 7th morning, I caught Mr. Pell on his own step, locking up, missing the keyhole twice. I had spent a night phrasing one question so that it would not be a complaint. How many names are in that column? 12, he said, with yours, and the other 11. They pushed the key back through this letterbox. You are the first who came and asked me anything. Then he gave me the rest of it in the voice of a man reading out a delivery note. A company wrote to me on Tuesday. Harrow Group. They want to know whether 4B is occupied. Why would they want that? Because a clerk somewhere had 4B down as empty, he said. And what did you tell them? What the lease says, that it is not. Who are they? He turned his collar up. They have been buying the boarded shops behind your building for 2 years, he said, and stopped there. Are you cooking in it? Every day. Good, he said. My phone has not made a call since April. It still takes messages because taking is free. On the way home, it took one. The first thing that house had sent me in 5 years. Elias. Sunday dinner at 6, now that things have settled. Don't bring anything. Julian's bringing the new girl helping out at the house, so wear a collar. Mum. Nothing had settled. I had settled. 3 nights on a bench, then a flat with somebody already in it. My mother writes Elias and says Eli, and has since I was 9. Then the arithmetic. In that house, the help has a first name and an hourly rate, and gets mentioned only when she is late. Nobody warns a son about staff. You warn him about somebody he will have to be polite to. Whatever the new girl helping out is helping out with, my mother had already counted her a chair. I typed no. I looked at it a while, deleted it, and typed 6 o'clock. In 5 years, that house had not asked me for one thing, and now it wanted me at a table. On the way back, I spent $1.90 on a tin of tomatoes, 2 onions, and a bulb of garlic. $22.40 left, no work, and 2 of us to feed. Then I told the kitchen, out loud at the counter, feeling as ridiculous as I had on the 4th morning. Sunday evening, I am out, 3 hours, back before 9. The front door unlocked itself, and came in about an inch, and stayed there all night. Kept to the letter, by the only party that has ever kept anything to the letter with me. Downstairs, a woman of 78 was eating my beans and telling me to go. A company I had never heard of had my flat written down as empty. My mother wanted a collar at 6. And the one thing in this city that had asked me to stay had asked by shutting every door in the place at once. Then said, sorry with a plate. I lay under 2 blankets in a room with a door standing open an inch. That family has refused me in writing, politely, twice. Nobody has ever wanted me enough to lock me in. Lying there, I worked out, honestly, which of the 2 I would rather have. Then I turned over so I could not see the door. Nobody makes the part I needed. The boiler under Foxglove Court went in before my father was born, and what had died in it was a rod of copper the length of my thumb. Vetch's yard cuts parts off dead machines and sells them by the handful. $8, the man said. 6. 8. That week, $8 was 2 days of eating. Mrs. Okafor gave me the basement key on a shoelace. The man who used to see to it stopped coming, she said. When? Before you were born, probably. The boiler stood in the dark like a ship's engine, cold all the way through, and not one bolt on it seized. The pilot lit and died. A water heater in my last kitchen did the same. I bled the line, fitted the rod, held the button 90 seconds, and let go. The flames stayed. Then something moved in the pipes over my head, one floor at a time, all the way up. 9 flats of iron came back on, with a knocking you could hear in the courtyard. Mrs. Okafor had her hand on her radiator when I came up. She did not say thank you. Don't get proud about it, she said. Onions, carrots, tomatoes, and pork bones went into the pot, whatever was left from the week before. The thrift on Ward Street had a mattress at $22. I priced it twice and walked past. 4B had been warm since the first night. After the boiler, it was something else. The gray went out of the bathroom corner that had always been gray. Things stopped happening one at a time. The kettle went on while the window shut, while the light over the stove came up. None of it waited its turn. There is a cold that used to stand beside me at the counter, about where a person stands. That week it stood there, and it was not cold. She spoke once. You spent it on the house. I said I spent it on hot water. You spent it on the house, she said, and nothing else for 2 days. I left yesterday's rice out to sea. It was steaming when I came back. So you're a microwave, I said, with opinions. The fan over the stove switched itself off. I keep the lease folded in the knife roll. On Tuesday, it was on the table, squared to the edge, with a line under Mr. Pell's clause that was not there when I signed. Brown ink. In a hand taught to write long before I was, the same brown as the thread in my cuff. The rent is raised to 2 dinners a week. I did not argue with Elise. I got the pen out of the duffel and wrote Tuesday and Friday under her line, because a cook needs to know his nights. I had the pan on by 7. Friday was pork bones and a flour dumpling. There is no describing cooking for somebody who does not eat. Sunday I took the number 12 across town and counted what was left with both fares already out of it. $14 exactly. The door opened before Julian got to it. A woman in a gray dress had my coat off my shoulders before I was through the hall. This is Seraphine, my mother said, and gave her no surname and no job. Lamb shoulder, in since morning, off the bone in 1 piece. Carrots glazed, not boiled. A sauce that should have split 40 minutes before it reached that table and had not. 4 plates down inside 20 seconds, all 4 hot. The last one landed under my father while he was still sitting. I have worked with 11 cooks who could put that meal out. 2 of them without a second pair of hands. None of them without you seeing it done. She called him Julian. She called me Mr. Marsh. There were 4 Marshes at that table, and she said it the way you read a name off a list. There was no 5th plate. She stood at the end of the room the whole meal and ate nothing, and I was the only one who noticed. What's it costing you, Julian said. It's cheap. Cheap how? Cheap enough. After the plates, he went upstairs and came down with a box. We cleared your room in the spring, he said. Aunt Connie wanted the lot gone. I said no, that's Eli's, and packed it myself. A swimming certificate, a tin of foreign coins, 3 paperbacks with the spines gone, a school tie, and a brown envelope with my grandmother's writing across the front. Everything in that box was packed dusty. The envelope was on top and clean, and the flap had been opened and tucked back under. The envelope was there, and the photo was missing. What was in this? I said. Julian did not look up from his coffee. The one of you and Gran on the front step, he said. It'll turn up. That stuff got moved twice. I had not told him what was in it. My mother said it would be up in the roof somewhere. My father said we would all have a look. I said sure and put the lid back on in front of them. My grandmother is the reason I know what marigolds smell like. The summer I was 9, she put me on a bus every Saturday with a bunch of them wrapped in newspaper. Leave them on the sill, she said. Don't knock. Don't wait. I never found out whose house it was, and I could not find that street now if you drove me. She died the winter I turned 12. My mother said Mum had her kindnesses and passed the carrots. He had been building up to it since the plates went down. My father got his book out at the table, wrote it in front of everybody, and pushed it across. $500. To help you get settled. Nobody there needed telling what $500 was to me. My mother had been looking at my cuffs all evening. I put my hand flat on it and left it there. What's it for? I said. Getting you on your feet, he said. It's so the 3 of you can tell each other. I'm all right, I said. Eli, my mother said. I'm not angry, I said. I'm just not having it. I pushed it back about 8 inches and my father did not pick it up. I didn't take the check. I want to be straight about the arithmetic, because I did it twice on the bus. $500 was a mattress, a month of food, and a phone that worked. Julian let it sit 3 seconds and took the room off me. He's proud, he said. Let him be proud. Then, to my mother, I'll ask around for him, Aunt Connie. I know the man at the Beaumont. She thanked him for it. My father put the check away in his own top pocket. That is how a man with nothing gives $500 away and somebody else gets thanked. In the hall, Julian handed me my coat and told me a thing I had not asked for, which is how he puts you in his debt. Uncle Richard had the house valued in March. You know the biggest single line on it. He tipped his head at the kitchen door. $2 million. For the house, I said. For her, he said. and went back to the Beaumont. I did not know what that sentence meant. I knew what the number meant. I have never had any trouble with the number. Seraphine held the door for me. "Mr. Marsh," she said. Then she looked at the mend on my cuff about a second longer than anybody looks at a cuff. "Tell whoever does your mending that the thread is older than the coat," she said. Pleasantly. She had the lock over while I was still on the step. I did the arithmetic on the bus, because I do arithmetic instead of the other thing. Bellhaven, 4 years, $26,000 a year, $104,000, $800 a month on top of it for 48 months. $38,400 more. My grandfather's watch was promised to me at 16 in front of everybody. Julian had it on at 19 and sold it at 21 for $600. The same watch went at auction 2 years ago for $4,300. And a line on a valuation that stands at the end of a room and does not eat. $2 million. $2,146,700. Against that, $900 toward a knife roll when I was 17, and of course I paid off myself over 19 months. And one night on a floor, which is the only thing I ever asked them for. I have never said a word of it to any of them. The flat had every light on when I got back, and the door came open before the key was round. There was food. Monday morning, a man in a Harrow Group fleece was photographing the railings. Condition photographs, he said. Stairwell, roof space, all 9 flats, on a schedule with my number on it. He had a key. It turned. It turned twice. He put his shoulder to it, then his hip, then he stood back and looked up the building like it had said something to him, and the front door would not open. I had come through that door 40 minutes before with a bag of bones in one hand. "Open it then," he said. "It sticks in the damp," I said. "It isn't damp," he said. It was not damp. Mrs. Okafor's window went up over our heads and stayed up the whole time. She did not say a word. She only wanted the air. He got 40 photographs of a shut door. He wanted my name on a line saying he had been refused. I said nobody refused him anything, which was true. 11 minutes, and he was in his car. When his taillights were out through the gate, I opened the door with one finger. That night, I emptied the box onto the floor and went through it again, in case I had been unfair to him. The certificate, the coins, the tie, the paperbacks, the envelope with nothing in it. I left it on the table where it fell, flap open. In the morning, it was in the middle of the table, squared to both edges, and the crease had been pressed out of it. Somebody had taken the trouble to make an empty envelope neat. The flat was cold that morning, first time since the boiler. Nothing in it came on until noon. Part 4. Dario carried the lights up 4 flights and had a number ready before he got his breath back. $400 a month, he said. Rent, food, a phone plan. I told him the kitchen didn't behave. He said that was the pitch. The gear was borrowed off a man who shoots weddings and owed him a favor. 2 ring lights with cracked feet, a tripod missing its leg clamp, a phone holder taped shut. $60 of equipment, generously priced. I had $14, a lease that costs $1 a month, and a second rent I pay in 2 dinners a week. Dario never asked about the second rent. The cold came up while he was plugging in the second light, not a draft, the kind that rises out of the floor and stands beside you at the counter. Then the cupboard by the extractor opened and shut, once, without hurry. Dario looked at me. I said the hinges were tired. He said hinges, sure, and went back to unrolling his cable. She spoke while he was in the bathroom testing a light. "You will not point that at me." Her voice arrives from wherever she chooses, and that night it came from the window over the sink. I said it points at the stove. She said the stove is mine. I said everything here is yours, which was the only true thing I had to trade. The lens does not turn past the kitchen door frame. Tuesday, 7:30. Chicken thighs, onions, a tin of tomatoes, rice, $11 of food that had to cover 2 nights. I turned the camera on. 6 people were watching, and 2 of them were Dario on 2 devices. For 19 minutes, it was a man browning chicken in a quiet room. Then the pan lid I'd left flat on the counter rose 4 inches, hung there while I diced, and set itself down on the pot. The count went from 9 to 410 in under a minute. The chat said wires. The chat said do it again. Somebody said his aunt's house did that once and the family was out inside a month. I didn't pull a face. I said, "That's the house," and turned the heat down, because the chicken was catching. Dario told me afterwards that the not reacting was the entire product. She made her point for another 40 minutes. The salt came across the counter into my hand. The pantry door opened on the paprika before I finished the word. The window fogged in a warm room, then cleared. $23.50 in tips. Dario worked out his cut and then didn't take it. Next week, he said, when it's real money. Week 2 paid the phone. Week 3 was $360, more than I had earned in the previous 9 weeks put together, and the first money in my life that nobody skimmed before it reached me. What I did with it embarrassed him. Stairwell bulbs, $31 for a box of 12, because 9 flats worth of landings were running on 3 working lights. A hinge and a bolt for the courtyard gate, 19 more. Sealant for the front room window, $11. Buy a chair, Dario said. I said the gate bangs all night. He said you don't own the gate. I said it bangs anyway and went down and fixed it. Mrs. Okafor watched me from her step with her arms folded. The last man who fixed anything in this building has been dead a long time, she said. Then she brought me soup, which is how she says most things. Thursday, the whole rack over the stove turned to face one way, every handle at the same angle. The chat lost its mind. I said nothing about the bulbs. There was nothing to say about the bulbs. In week 4, Dario switched on donation voices. $5 gets your message read out in whatever voice the platform picks. Donations triple when people hear themselves, he said. The first one landed during the onions. A woman's voice, bright and flat and slightly wrong, coming out of my own speakers into that kitchen. Marianne_87 says, Chef, marry me. All 4 burners went out at once. The room dropped until my breath showed on camera. The knives on the strip above the board turned one after another, unhurried, until every point was aimed at the door. 2,000 people watched me relight a hob in silence. The clip was cut and posted before I had the rice on. Somebody captioned it, Wifey said no. By morning, it was the biggest thing we had made. Afterwards, with the camera off, she asked me who Marianne was. Not angry, quieter than angry. I said it's a machine reading a stranger's typing. She said it is a woman's voice in my kitchen, and said nothing else that night. The chat found the pattern in 4 days. Say something kind and the room warms. Send a woman's voice and the extractor dies. They started paying $5 a go to test it, which is how a haunting becomes a business. Then on a Sunday, somebody typed the line, she's not a poltergeist, she's a bride. Look at the place. She's keeping house. Somebody underneath answered, the bride of Foxglove Court. It was in a thumbnail by Tuesday. They meant it as a joke. That's the part I keep going back to. 40,000 people said a true thing about a woman none of them could see, laughed, and went back to arguing about how I hold a knife. I asked her, over the sink, whether she wanted me to stop reading the chat out loud. She said, they are strangers with nothing better to do. Then, after a long pause, read the one about the windows again. Dario assembled his theory over 10 days and delivered it in my kitchen with the confidence of a man closing a case. You've got a girlfriend, he said. She lives here. That's why the camera never turns past the door. He had evidence. Mended shirts on a man who can't sew. 2 portions on a night I said I wasn't hungry. The way I say we. A door that sticks for him and opens for me. She's married, isn't she? He said. Or she's somebody's, and you're covering for her. And the poltergeist is the cover story. He was enormously pleased with himself. I said if I had a girlfriend I'd be eating better. You are eating better, he said. You've put weight on, your knives are oiled, and you hum. 6 years I've known you. You have never hummed. I let him keep it. It was the closest anyone came. The man from Harrow Group came up on a Thursday at 8:09, live in the rain, with no umbrella. Good coat, folder under his arm, shoes that had never met that staircase. He knocked while the camera was running and stepped in before I finished opening the door. People move like that when they have been told the tenant is a formality. He was 30 and doing what he had been told. He set the check on my counter, face up, next to the onions, and squared it with 2 fingers. $5,000. Goodwill, he called it. A payment toward moving costs. 14 days to be out. I picked it up and read it twice. My rent is $1 a month. $5,000 buys 416 years of this flat, and then I would need somewhere to sleep for the 417th. He smiled because it sounded like a negotiation. It was not one. I gave the check back. I put it in his hand and closed his fingers over it, the way you hand a man his own keys when he has been drinking. He asked if I wanted the night to think. I said no. He said Mr. Harrow's office doesn't usually make the same offer twice. Then he looked at the tripod and at the number in the corner of my screen. 11,000 people watched a man in a good coat try to buy an apartment for less than his car cost. He left without shaking my hand. Halfway down, the cold caught him, and he took the last flight 2 at a time. That clip outperformed everything we had made. It put my face, my building, and the name of a company that buys blocks into the same 40 seconds in public, with the date sitting under it. Dario came round Saturday with a spreadsheet he was proud of. He wanted a weekly segment, sponsored, Make the Wife Jealous. Donors pay to pick the voice. The chat votes on the dare. 60% of new subscribers come off the jealousy clips, he said. And he had done the arithmetic twice. He had rent due on the 15th. He had earned the right to ask. I said no. He said, hear the format first. I said no. And then I said the sentence I had apparently been building all week without knowing it. Her dignity is not a segment. He didn't laugh. That is what I will always owe Dario. He sat on my counter, asked whether I could hear myself, and I said yes. And he said fine, and opened his phone and pulled the clip down. 200,000 views, deleted at 11 at night, without me asking. If she's off limits, he said, she's off limits everywhere. Then he asked whether she takes a cut. I said she gets the building. When he had gone, the flat was warm, not comfortable. Warm the way a room is when somebody has stood in it for hours with the oven on, waiting for you to come back and notice she did it. The laptop was open on the table. I had shut it. It was open, scrolled back 4 hours, the screen squared exactly to the edge of the table, sitting on the line where they gave her a name. She never said she liked it. She called them my strangers and my hobby. And once, people with nothing to do. Every night I closed that lid. Every morning it was up again, on the part where they were kind. On Sunday there were 4 of them in the courtyard filming the front of the building. Mrs. Okafor asked me from her step whether I knew what I had started. One of them asked her which window was the bride's. I stood out there and looked up with the rest of them, doing arithmetic. $900 in 4 weeks, most of it spent on other people's hinges. 40,000 people with our address, a company that has now seen my face. Part 5. The second man Harrow Group sent came up my stairs with nothing in his hands. No folder, no envelope, nothing to set on my counter. He wiped his shoes before he spoke. That is how I knew he cost more. He told me his name twice, Ashby. He did not come in. He stood on the landing with his hands loose and asked for 4 minutes. And behind me the flat did nothing at all. She listens before she spends anything. He had done this in 9 buildings, he said. The block is coming down, not might, is. Whether I am in it or not, and he would rather I was not. Then the sentence he had climbed 4 flights to say, everybody is happier when people go before it gets ugly. I asked what ugly meant. Twice out of 9, he said, and described neither one, and never made it sound better than it is. What do you want? He asked. He had a pen in his coat and never took it out. No paper either, and no number, because his office tried that in the rain, and I gave it back before it was warm. So I gave him arithmetic, $1 a month, utilities in, and a door that shuts. Anything he moves me into takes most of what I earn, and hands back a room I did not pick. Then he asked, pleasantly, whether I wanted a week to think it over. I told him no, 2 words with nothing after them, to a courteous man in my own doorway. I have left every place I ever lived at night with a bag. So nobody had to say anything at breakfast. 7 kitchens and 1 family. The word costs nothing to say and sits in you afterwards like food. He did not argue. He asked one more thing, the money or the building, and when I said the building, he looked sorry for me. Money is easy, he said. Buildings are not. He goes back now and reports that talking to me does not work, and after that, it stops being him. Was that a threat? I said. He said it was a schedule. The cold came up the stairwell while he buttoned his coat, and he called it a draft. 2 flights down, he stopped and came back up 3 steps. 11 families went out of here in 2 years, he said. Nothing in any letter moved them. Do you know what did? I said the roof. He went down. I shut the door, and the last inch went out of my hand and closed itself. Dario's first question, later, was whether the camera had been running. It had not. There are 10 boxes in our hall for 9 flats. The extra one has no number, and Pell empties it on the first Tuesday, alone, in a coat and hat. He asked after the boiler, and I said it was behaving. I said the back corner of the roof is gone, and that whoever built this place built it properly, and then somebody stopped. Pell said the block used to belong to a family called Vane, and asked whether I had the rent envelope. He put my dollar in an inside pocket, told me the gate plate was loose again, and went out with 3 more stops before lunch. I had a pan soaking and a stream at 6:30. That is the whole reason I did not ask a second question. The name went to the back of my head with the other things I was not dealing with. The letter came Wednesday. Cream envelope, a hotel's name on the flap, sent to the street anybody can read off my thumbnails. I propped it against the salt tin and did not open it. The chicken went in at 20 past. When the pans were down, it was gone. The flat helped me look. My lighter came out from under the fridge, and a peeler I had blamed Dario for. Twice I said so out loud to an empty kitchen. The room stayed warm. I stopped looking, and the letter came back 2 days later, face up on the mat inside my door on the Friday, as if the post had just been. The post comes at 8 and I had carried it up myself. There was nothing in the box for me. The stamp was franked Tuesday. She can put a room's air on the floor and she can iron. She cannot change the day a machine printed in another city. A chef 200 miles north had watched a man fry thighs in a cold kitchen and wanted to meet him. Monday, 10 o'clock. 3,100 a month. And a room over the kitchen until I found my own. That is twice what 6 weeks of the stream has made, and it comes every month with a bed in it. 2 months ago, I would have been on the platform before I finished the page. I put it on the counter face up and asked where it had been. She did not pretend. Under the boards by the window, she said, where the pipe runs. How long were you keeping it? I said. Until Monday. There was no excuse under it. She was not sorry, and she was not asking me anything. She was giving me a date. 200 miles, she said. Men go for 2 days and finish it in writing. Nobody who packed a bag in this building came back up for what they left behind. What did holding it cost you? I said. Warmth, she said. And then, less than the other thing would have cost. 2 days of a lukewarm tap and a window fogged in a hot kitchen, and I had told the chat the weather turned. I asked whether anything else had gone missing since I moved in. There was a pause with a shape to it. Then no. I have thought about that pause since more than about the job. I rang the hotel from the stairwell with my door open so she got all of it. They could still see me Monday. I said no and thank you, and gave a reason that was not the reason. Then I came in and said the part that mattered. She had not cost me the job. She had cost me the 10 seconds where I decide, and those are the only thing I own outright. The one thing I asked her for in my first week is written in pencil inside a cupboard. No door in this flat is held shut on either of us. She kept that exactly, and exactly was the trouble, because none of it covered what comes in under it. So we did it again at 11 at night, both of us angry, which is not how the first one went. Anything with my name on it is mine, not held, not moved, not read first. She took that in 3 words and priced it. I tell her before I sleep anywhere else. And if I ever go for good, I say it at that door, to her, with my mouth. I have never done that once. My mother learned I had left the city from a neighbor. I said yes to the first straight away, stood a long time over the second, then said yes to that as well. Her message came Saturday. She had heard I was on the internet, 6 o'clock Sunday, and she used the word settled again, because it worked the first time. I laid the hoodie out on purpose, gray. Burn on the cuff, the only garment I own that my father has ever remarked on. Small war, small budget. At 5:30, it hung on the door, with a crease down each sleeve you could cut bread with, and the hood pressed flat as a collar. I said I could not go out in that. The iron was still hot. So I went to my mother's house in a hoodie ironed into a dress shirt. It is the best I have ever looked. I have rarely been angrier. Seraphine opened my parents' front door. She took the hoodie off my shoulders like a coat, hung it where coats go, and did not smile at it. The not smiling was the expensive part. She set water in front of me before my mother thought to want it, and lamb in front of my father without the mint, because he does not take mint and has never said so at that table. You can always tell, Julian said, watching her go round. Somebody grows up around it or they don't. My mother agreed with her chin. $2 million of assigned service was setting a jug down on my mother's cloth. 6 weeks of my kitchen has made $1,400, and $400 of it is screwed to the walls of Foxglove Court. Julian waited for the plates. So, the haunted stunt, he said. Is she well? Are you charging her, or is it the other way round? My father laughed 1 beat late, as he does at everything. Do the trick, he said. Make a spoon move for us. Then he set his glass down and said her name once, and she was at his shoulder before he finished it, with the wine, unasked. That is service, he said. That is what it looks like when somebody has paid for it. Yours is a cupboard on a string. Seraphine put the bottle down and went back to the wall where she stands. He reached the photograph over the potatoes. That one of you and Gran turned up, he said, in a box in the garage. I'll dig it out for you sometime. He watched my hands while he said it. Everybody at that table was waiting for something to happen, and only 2 of us knew which thing. My father said a name into the gap. Mine. So, I put both hands flat on the cloth where the 4 of them could see them, and said it to my father, because he has spent 5 years waiting to be right. I will never put a hand on him. Not tonight. Not if he keeps that photograph until I am 50. There is a story in this house about what I am, and the only thing it has been short of is me. It is going to stay short. My mother asked whether anybody wanted more potatoes. Seraphine filled my glass before anyone else's and did not look at me while she did it. Julian smiled into his wine, and I watched him take delivery of it. A man who shows you where his wall is has told you exactly how hard it can be leaned on. He shook my hand at the door, which he has never done. Good speech, he said. In front of them, too. Then quieter. You should have kept some of that back. The flat was hot when I got in. Not warm. Hot, the way a kitchen is when the oven has been on since 5 with nothing in it. I hung the hoodie up and told her about the crease. Then she asked what he is called. I said it did not matter. She asked where he lives, in the voice she uses for the shopping. I said nowhere she can go. She said no. Not a question and not an argument, just agreeing with me. In a room that had gone quiet the way it goes when she has stopped standing in it. In the morning, the street door would not open. Not for Mrs. Okafor with her shopping, not for the boy who leaves the menus, not for Dario, who rang me from the step with 2 light stands. I came down in my socks and put my hand on it and it opened like nothing. Mrs. Okafor looked at me. Not at the door, at me. By noon, every door in that building worked the way doors work, and nobody said a word about it. Part 6. Harrow tried paper on me, then a man, and neither of them moved me an inch. On Monday, it spent money on somebody who was actually good at this. Dario had her inside 4 minutes. Celeste Adler, a cable program, a waiting list, $8,000 a day, and the rate printed on her own site like a menu. She stopped 2 steps below my landing with a flat case under her arm. Mr. Marsh, I am going to put my hands on these walls today. I would rather you watched me than heard about it. She opened the case on the 3rd floor half landing, on a folded cloth, a brass level, a thermometer on a chain, gray thread, a wallet of paper strips, blue chalk, no candles, no bells. Harrow's camera came up behind her. Dario put his phone on the flight below. She hung the thread in the stairwell turn and watched it, then moved the back of her hand up the 2nd flight wall an inch at a time. 3 at the courtyard door. 5 on the 1st landing. 11 at the 4th floor line, she said, and 11 is the highest I have read anywhere. 11 degrees of what? I asked. Tether, she said. How long a thing has held on, and how hard. Yours has been holding since before either of us was born. Then she gave the camera the sentence she was paid for. There is nothing living in this building. What is here is weather with a memory, and weather has no rights and no home. She said it kindly, and that is what got under my skin. Celeste Adler is not selling. She believes what she does is a mercy, and she says it in the voice she keeps for numbers. May I see your flat? She said. No, I said, and she never asked twice. My lease costs $1 a month, and it says who I may keep in there. That morning, the dollar bought me a door a famous woman would not walk through. Then the corridor belongs to Harrow, she said, and the corridor will do. She pressed a strip of printed paper at each corner of it, ran blue chalk along the skirting, and called it a quarter of what she does. A test. The corridor answered by dying. For 8 weeks, the air outside my door had been a person's attention. Cold that stands next to you, lilies in a hallway with no flowers. By the time her case shut, it smelled of paint and old carpet, and my breath stopped showing. That night, I went out for the bulb box and turned round to say something to her, the way you do in your own kitchen. She was at the door frame, not stopped in it, standing behind it, on her own side. Come out, I said. She looked at half a step of bare floorboard the way you look at a river. I put my hand back through the doorway. Inside, the air knew me. Outside, it was nobody's. It is not mine now, she said, and went to stand at the sink, which is where she goes when she does not want to be looked at. She did not sulk. She got competitive, which was worse and much funnier. Tuesday, I came home to a flat gone over like a hotel room, every handle on the rack at the same angle. The tureen was down off the top shelf, white, gold rim, and in 8 weeks I had not been allowed to move it 2 inches. Rice and chicken thighs in it, on my table polished. Then the questions. How old is she? Does she come alone? She stood a long time in the door of my bedroom. What was she measuring in there? She is measuring how long something has held on, I said. She is not here for you. She has been in every room but mine, she said, with a line and a measure. Then, her shoes. What do shoes like that cost? I said maybe $800. I have never handed a person a number and watched it land like that. Wednesday, both my good shirts were pressed. Thursday, the stairwell was scrubbed in the night before the woman came back. I did not mention the stairs and she did not mention the shirts. Celeste came back with a bigger wallet and named each one before she did it. The courtyard door, the 1st floor turn, the 2nd landing, my own door frame. 19 strips counted into a notebook. Sometime in the night, the bride went down my stairs and took the woman's work off the walls. Every strip she could get her hands on, in the dark, without waking anybody in the building. She could not reach the corridor. Everywhere else, she left her seals folded in a stack at the foot of the 3rd flight, on the step where the case had stood, halved and halved again, with the corners squared. Celeste came up at 8 and stopped with a foot either side of it. She crouched and counted them twice without touching them. Then she laughed, one breath, no sound in it. 31 houses, she said. Not one of them ever tidied up after me. She took her phone out on my stairs and used it in front of me. I want the full term. I am doubling my rate. He can spend what he likes. It does not go faster. She left the corridor alone that morning, and every morning after. Whatever the night had cost, it had not bought that back. The corridor stayed shut to her, and it is shut now. The price was upstairs. The front room had stopped being a color. All of it, the gray of a photograph of itself. I stood in there with my hand on a hot radiator and watched my own breath. The tureen had a crack in it. Hairline, lip to foot, straight through the gold. Nothing had fallen. Nothing in that flat has ever fallen. On the boards in the middle of the gray room, where I could not get past it, was a hairpin. Black, plain, a chip of green enamel on the head. I picked it up and it stayed cold in my hand. She was gone that night, and the next. And when the voice came, it came from further off than it ever had. I ran the oven with its door open and cooked 2 days for nobody. On the third night, the cold came back and stood at the counter. Dario's 40 seconds of that folded stack went past 1 million views before Saturday lunchtime. A famous woman crouching on a step, 19 pieces of paper squared off like napkins. Then, the internet did what it does. Housekeeping. Ghost with a lint roller. An apron on the thumbnail. 100 people asked whether she does other buildings. The top comment offered her $12 an hour. She asked me what was funny, not angry. She wanted the answer. I started explaining a joke about a maid to the woman who had spent a room of her own house on it, and halfway through I stopped talking. I called Dario and asked him to take it down. He said no 3 ways and everyone was fair. That clip was the channel, and there was a knife company in his inbox. $400 already paid and gone on his rent. You want me to burn the biggest thing we ever made, he said, for the feelings of a room. She is not a room, I said. I know, he said. That is worse, and that is exactly why it works. Dario took the clip down at 1:20 in the morning and sent the knife people their $400 back out of money he did not have. It made no difference. 4 other channels had it mirrored by then, and the apron is still out there. $8,000 a day for the woman with the case. $12 an hour for the one who folded her paper. Harrow reads the same numbers as everybody else. On Saturday, it brought a bigger one to the front door and waited there until I came down. Not the young man. A woman in her 50s, flat shoes, a folder that had been opened before, her own camera operator, a dozen phones in the courtyard, and Mrs. Okafor on her step. She made me come to her, which is a different job, and she knew it. Then she said the number out loud, so the whole yard had it. $50,000 today. For the keys. What is Mrs. Okafor being offered? I said. She was not able to discuss another resident's position. I asked her to say that again louder, and she did, because it did not occur to her to hide. Take it, a man by the gate shouted. Take it and buy the old lady a house. Don't you sign anything for me, boy, Mrs. Okafor said from her step, and she did not raise her voice either. I never touched the folder. Put 50,000 on every door in this building, I said, and I will sign first. Otherwise, it is not an offer. It is a list, and you have shown me where my name goes on it. There is always a number, Mr. Marsh, she said. I know, I said. That is my whole problem with you. It cost me. By Sunday, Harrow had their own cutout, and half my chat spent 2 days deciding I was farming an old woman for content on a staircase I do not own. And for a second, it nearly cost more. When their camera operator put a foot into the hallway, the front door came at him. Not a slam. Slower than a slam and much worse, the way a heavy thing moves when something is carrying it. It stopped a hand's width off his shoulder and hung there. Don't, I said. Out loud, in front of a dozen phones. The door went back against the wall and stayed. He laughed about the draft and kept looking at it. Upstairs, I bolted the door and stood against it until my hands were steady. He is 30 years old and he carries a bag for a company, I said. He came inside, she said, because that is what he is paid for. Another foot and he goes down those steps head first in front of every phone out there, and it is mine before it is ever yours. Then I asked her never to touch a living person for me, not to frighten one on my account, not to move one, not to put a hand or a door or a stare on anybody who had been rude to me in my own courtyard. She took a long time over it. She does not lie, and she will not agree to a thing just to end a conversation. When the answer came, it came in pieces. Not for you, she said. I will not put my hand on the living for you, not for your temper and not for your pride. And if one of them comes for me, that is my house and my business, and you will not ask me for that either. All right, I said. Then she named her half, because nothing in that flat is free. You do not bleed where I cannot reach you. Not on the street and not for anybody's money. I said all right to that as well. After she went quiet, I walked through the place and counted, which is what I do instead of sleeping. 9 paces of corridor that used to be hers. 1 room the color of a photograph. 1 crack through the gold. A hairpin on the sill that will not warm up. Downstairs, the step was bare. The woman had taken her folded paper home in a plastic bag, photographed all 19 of them, and booked herself back in for Monday with the other 3 quarters. The clip is gone, and the joke is not. The corridor is quiet, and the front room is cold. Everything I was proud of this week came out of the same account, and it is not my account. Part 7. For 10 weeks, Mrs. Okafor had fed me in her doorway, bowl in one hand, door in the other, like a woman posting bail. On Thursday, she stood back and opened it wide. "Bring your own spoon," she said. "I am not washing too." Her kitchen ran hotter than mine and smelled of smoke and pepper. She cooked for 8. There was one of her, and there had been one of her for years, and there was never anything left in the pot. She set the bowl down and put her hands flat on the table. That is how old women tell you they are about to spend something. "So, you have made this building famous. Now people ask me about it in the shop." "Ask what?" "Whether it is true," she said. "Whether the flat is what they say." "I have never said on that stream what it is." "That is not the same as no," she said. Then she told it. She had heard it so often she had stopped checking it. In 1986 there was a wedding in this house. The Vanes owned the block. The bride was a Vane. The groom, a Harrow. On the morning of the wedding, she did not come down. Mrs. Okafor delivered it flat, like a punchline she did not write. She ran, she said, and she ran with her dowry. Everything, she said. The papers, the money, whatever a house like that counts before it hands a girl over. Gone in a night and never found. Her father shut the house and paid to keep it shut, and inside 2 years he was dead. I have listened to men in kitchens tell stories about women all my working life. They all have that shape. Somebody expensive was disappointed, so the girl became the crime. What was her name? Filling the bowl took her longer than it needed to. "My husband worked with his hands in this building for 30 years, she said. "He never once said that name in my kitchen. So you do not say it either." She set the bowl down hard enough to matter. "I say plenty," she said. "I am 78. My habits go when I decide. Eat. You have gone thin since that stream started." Dario was on my stairs that evening with the laptop and the face he makes when the internet has handed him something. "I have it," he said. The building was a cult. A forum post from somebody's aunt. A photograph of 9 mailboxes. A theory that a group lived here in the 80s and went out in one night. "It is 9 flats," I said. 9 is a very cult number, Dario said. "The rent is $1 a month, and I had been leaving it in an envelope. That week, I walked it across town instead, because a man who takes your money in person owes you 30 seconds. Pell's office is 1 room over a shoe repair with a brass plate older than my father. He did not ask me to sit. He wrote a receipt for $1, blotted it, and waited. Pell does not talk. Pell answers. "So?" I asked exactly. "Was there a wedding in this house in 1986? "Yes." "Who was to be married?" "Miss Vane of Foxglove Court to Mr. Julian Harrow." "Did it take place?" "It did not." "What does the family say happened?" "The family's word," he said, "is that the bride left the house before the ceremony, and the dowry was never recovered." "Is that your word?" "My word is the family's word." "Do you believe it?" He capped his pen. His hands were not steady, and he did not hide them. "I am instructed to keep that house tenanted, Mr. Marsh. Nothing in the instruction requires me to believe anything. That has been convenient." Then I asked the thing I had walked across town to ask. What was her name? He did not look anything up. He had been carrying it in his mouth a long time. Odette. Odette Vane. "Nobody has asked me that," he said, "in 40 years. They ask about the money." Then he turned the receipt round so I could take it, and wished me a good afternoon. And that was the whole of it. Going up the stairs, I said it to myself, to find out what it did in my mouth. Inside, the kettle was on, and my knife roll had been moved 8 inches left, which is where I keep it, and not where I left it. I put my back against the counter. Then I said her name out loud, Odette. Nothing happened for long enough that I felt like a fool. Then the kettle stopped climbing, and held its note. Not boiling, not going quiet. She was in the doorway, hands at her sides. "Say it again," she said. "Odette." Then she crossed the kitchen and sat down at my table. In 10 weeks, I had never once seen her sit down. Then I asked her if she wanted tea. It is the stupidest thing I have ever said to another person. She looked at the kettle a while and said no, but she stayed sitting down. I gave her all of it, exactly as I got it, because leaving pieces out would have been its own kind of lying. She listened, with her hands flat on the table, as the other woman had. When I finished, she asked whether that was all of it. I said it was. "It is a tidy story," she said. "Tidy is what people keep. Then she asked whether Mrs. Okafor still cooks for 8. I sat there a while after she was gone. 40 years of a city calling a woman a thief, and the woman is in my kitchen moving my knife roll 8 inches so I can find it in the dark. Nadia came up on Saturday and did not call first. She had watched the stream. Everyone had apparently, where she works now. She stood on my landing in a coat I remembered, looking past me at the flat and pricing it while she talked. "You look good," she said. "You look like a man who sleeps." Her brother's firm wants somebody who can run a kitchen and a camera at once. $1,100 a week to start. A room in a building with a lift. Her own flat is 3 streets from it. Behind me, the flat stopped. Not cold, not lilies. Nothing you could have put on a stream. The fridge cut out in the middle of its hum. The tap held a drop and did not let it go. Nothing in that flat moved for 4 minutes. Nadia felt none of it. She said the building was the problem, that nobody builds a life in a place that is coming down. She was not wrong. Then I asked her one thing. When the restaurant went down and my name went with it, what was I worth? She said that was not fair. I said it was arithmetic. You put my bag on the landing and you never called. She did not lie about it, and I have never held it against her. I couldn't carry you, she said. My name was on the lease and there was no room in me for 2 people going under. So I said it. You could not carry me when I was worth nothing. Now I am worth $1,100 a week and suddenly you can. I am not being priced twice by the same person. You should go. She stayed a second longer than she meant to. It is not a competition, she said. Then she looked past me at the hallway and asked, much smaller, whether it was true about this flat. I said yes. I turned the deadbolt. The fridge came back on. The drop fell. The radiator I have never heard work ticked twice. It was warmer in there than in the corridor, which has not been hers since a woman in good shoes put paper on the wall. She was at the window with her back to me. I said her name and she said, without turning round, that she had not touched the woman. I know, I said. That was not a promise, she said. That was a report. Sam brought the order up on Tuesday. 2 containers, because it has been an order for 2 since my 2nd week, and I stopped arguing with the app. He came back up a flight to show me the tip. A stack of coins on the mat, squared off, edges lined up. Sam wanted to know if it was a bit for the stream. I said yes. Then I sat on the step and turned every one of them over. 1986. $2.40. In 1986, that was a generous tip on a delivery. She had not adjusted for anything. I gave Sam a 5 out of my own pocket, kept the coins, and did not tell her I had. My mother called on Sunday, which she does when she wants something small enough to pretend it is nothing. She asked how the filming was going. She has never used the right word for it, and I have stopped correcting her. Then the ask. Your father and I were thinking, now that you are doing so much of it, we could let Seraphine help. She is very good with equipment. It would be nothing to us. Let. That was the whole call in one word. I said no, thank you, that the flat was small, and I did not want anybody in it who had been sent. I said nothing against Seraphine. None of this is hers. She is the best thing in that house, and the only one in it nobody ever asked. Then my mother said, oh, before I forget, Julian is engaged. 3 weeks on Saturday, there is a dinner to announce it. Her name is Rosalind Teague. Her people have the 2 hotels on the river. My mother said the hotels twice, so I would hear it. Julian at 24, engaged in the house I grew up in. I wrote the date on the back of Pell's receipt and put it under a magnet on the fridge. And that was every bit of reaction I had in me. That night, the door at the end of the hall stood open. It had never been open. I tried it in my first week, felt it hold, and wrote it off as a landlord's cupboard. A bed frame with no mattress, a chair, a wardrobe with both doors wide and nothing inside, a window over the courtyard, no dust anywhere, not one thread of it, in a room shut for 40 years. She was behind me in the hall. You want somewhere to work that is not my kitchen, she said. Use it. I asked whose room it was. She said it had been closed a long time, and went past me. Odette, I said to her back. She stopped. Everybody in this city says you ran. She did not turn round, and she did not answer, and I stood, in a room kept clean for 40 years, with nothing in my hands. There is a look a woman has when she is given up. There is none of it in that flat. The city says she took everything and ran. I had a stack of her money in my pocket, squared off for a boy on a bicycle. I wanted the true one, and not out of curiosity. There is no version of it I can get on my own. Somebody has to decide to tell me. I went to bed in a flat with a name in it, and the name was the only thing of hers I had. Part 8. Morning came in under the blind before the boiler caught, and 11 weeks in, I did not lie there totting up what the day would cost me. I noticed that the way you notice a tooth stopped aching. Odette was already up, If up is the word for a woman who does not sleep. She stood at the window with her arms folded, watching the courtyard the way other people watch weather. Morning, I said. The blind lifted an inch on its own, which from her is a good morning. Dario texted at 9, numbers holding, 200 over yesterday, nothing to report. I told him to take the day. He asked why. I said because I wanted one and he let it go, which for Dario is its own kind of gift. I ate porridge standing at the counter, the way I eat when nobody's watching me eat badly. She sat across from me anyway, hands flat on the wood, and watched me get through it like it was a task worth supervising. It was the first day in 11 weeks I hadn't touched a knife for money. I noticed the space where that ought to have worried me, and nothing came to fill it. You slept, she said. Not a question. I said I had. Good, she said, as if she'd checked. Then she went quiet in the way that means she's deciding something, and I have learned not to hurry that. The engagement dinner was still under its magnet on the fridge. I hadn't answered it. She'd read the date off the receipt once, without asking whose engagement, and never brought it up again. I looked at it again before I went down to Mrs. Okafor's. 2 weeks and 5 days now, and I still had no answer ready. I told myself it did not matter what I eventually said to that dinner. I did not fully believe myself. I gave Mrs. Okafor an hour in the afternoon, mostly peeling for her, and taking the abuse she hands out with the peeler. You look less like a ghost this week, she said. Highest compliment I've had all month, I told her. She threw a potato at me gently, and I caught it. Back upstairs by 5, the flat had that stillness it gets before something. Not cold, quiet in a way that felt attended. The way a room feels different with somebody in the doorway before you've turned round. She was standing by the wardrobe in the room at the end of the hall, the one she had opened without being asked. In her hands was a book bound in cracked green cloth, small enough for a coat pocket, held the way you hold something you've decided to stop protecting. I want you to see this, she said. Nobody had asked her for it. I hadn't gone looking, hadn't opened a drawer in that room in 11 weeks. She crossed the hall and put it in my hands herself. Her hands were cold doing it, colder than the room. It was a ledger, her ledger. I knew the handwriting before I read a word of it, because I had been living beside it for 11 weeks in the shape of moved objects and warmed rooms. Small letters, upright, everyone closed at the top like she distrusted anything left open. I sat on the bare bed frame, and she sat beside me, which she had never once done. I opened it at the first page. It was a house being run for a wedding. Linen counts, a baker's name and his price for the cake. Hours booked for 2 girls to do flowers. Candles costed by the gross. Every entry dated, every page totted at the bottom in her own small sums. Guest names I didn't know and never would. Seating worked out and reworked in a different ink. An argument with herself over whether the Whitlock sat near the door. A woman running a house the size of a hotel, alone, on paper. Months out from one day. Further in, a kitchen staffed by name and wage. 2 extra cooks for the week, a dozen hands taken on for the breakfast alone, 6 hams, 4 geese, wine counted by the case. She had priced a wedding breakfast for 200 guests, down to the almonds in the cake. The handwriting changed near the end. Tighter, faster. 6 pages from the wedding, the ink ran thin, like the pen was drying and she wouldn't stop to fix it. Then, on a page headed with a date I did not need explained, the entries simply stopped. Candles for the hall, 6. Then nothing. No next day. No page left blank on purpose. The way you leave a page meaning to come back to it. Just an ending with no punctuation. The ledger of a life with somewhere left to go. I sat with that a long time before I noticed the pressed marigold. It lay flat between 2 pages near the back, gone the color of old tea, thin as a moth's wing. I knew its shape before I knew why, and then I did know why, and the knowing landed like a dropped plate. I left flowers on that sill, I said. Not to her exactly. To the book. My grandmother used to send me, every week, 1 bunch, marigolds, to a house she never named, and never explained. I was 11. I thought it was a chore. I never asked whose sill. She always gave the same instructions. Leave them on the ledge, knock at no door, wait for nobody's thanks. I walked it off memory of turns for 3 years, and never once learned the street's name. And then she stopped asking, and the errand simply ended. Odette didn't look at the flower. She looked at me. This one, she said, and touched the pressed shape without disturbing it. Every week, a boy who never once knocked. I used to watch for you from that window before I watched for anything else in my life. I did the arithmetic of it, because arithmetic is the only tool I trust when a thing is too large to feel straight through. A boy delivering flowers he didn't understand, to a woman already watching for him and nobody else. She knew me before I signed anything, I said. Not a question either. I knew you before you knew you were the same boy, she said. The lease was never why I let you stay. You were the reason I wrote the lease the way I did. There were 11 of you before, she said, her voice going flat the way it does when she is paying for something. 11 men and women who took that flat and never lasted the month. I made every one of them leave, she said. I am not sorry for all of them. I am sorry for some. I asked her why, and hated how small the question sounded, next to what she was handing me. Because none of them were you, she said. I had been alone in this building longer than any of them had been alive. I decided a long time ago that alone was worth defending. There was a man in 3B for 2 winters, she said. He never did anything to deserve it. I made the room too cold for him to sleep in until he gave his notice. And I have never told a living person that until tonight. The 11 who ran did not know what they were running from, I said. Only I knew that, she said. You're the first one I ever let choose, because you were the first one I had already chosen. Nobody had told me a true thing that plainly in a long time. The whole of my reaction lived in my chest and nowhere on my face, because that is the only place I know how to keep a thing safe. I set the ledger on the bed frame, careful of the spine. When I looked up, she was closer than she'd been a minute before, close enough that the cold coming off her was its own kind of announcement. Her hands found the sides of my face, cold enough to sting, the cold of a doorstep in January. I did not move away from it. I said her name once, low. Silence from her was answer enough. I will not set down what happened next in the order it happened. I will set down the one fact that mattered. Her hands started cold enough to hurt, and by the time she drew back, they were only cool. The ordinary cool of a hand that has been out of the sun. That difference is the only measurement I have ever fully believed. Afterward, she sat with her forehead against my shoulder, which she had never done. Neither of us reached for the ledger again that night. I did turn, eventually, to the last pages, headed differently, columns instead of paragraphs. Linens by the dozen, silver counted by the place setting, a parcel of land, written in a lawyer's language she had copied out in her own hand, rather than trust to memory. Everything a family sends with a daughter so the world knows what she is worth on the day she stops being theirs. All of it itemized, priced, accounted for down to the ribbon yard, none of it missing from the page. At the foot of the last page, she had totted the whole of it into one figure, underlined twice, the number of a small fortune, even now. I ran the sum against 9 years of kitchen wages, and came out short by most of a lifetime. I sat looking at a full and careful record of exactly what a woman had brought into a marriage. I thought about a city that had spent 40 years insisting she ran off with it. What kind of runaway keeps her own accounts? I said, mostly to myself. Odette didn't answer that one. She took the ledger back, closed it around the flower, the way you close a hand around something small and warm. She held it against her the rest of the night, like it was the only thing in the room that still belonged to her. I didn't ask what came after the last entry. I could see, from how she held the book, that it wasn't mine to ask for yet. I sat with her in a room shut for 40 years, and for one night, it was exactly as full as it looked. Late, with the courtyard dark under the one working lamp, she leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes, which she does not need to do, and did anyway, as if the gesture itself were a kind of rest. There is one more thing, she said so quiet I felt it before I heard it. I am not ready to give you that one yet. I said I could wait. She looked at me the way you look at someone you are about to owe an apology to in advance. You have been very patient with a dead woman's paperwork, she said. The rest of it is not paperwork. I did not ask what she meant. She did not offer to explain it. We sat with the ledger closed between us, and the one thing she had not said yet took up more of the room than anything she had. Part 9. The kitchen went dark early the next night. I hadn't turned the second lamp on, and neither had she. The wedding ledger sat where I'd left it, closed, and neither of us had touched it since. Sit down, she said. I did. I have something to tell you, and I am only going to say it once, all the way through. I told her I would let her. She stood with her back to the window, hands loose at her sides for once, not folded, not flat on any surface. That stillness was new. I had learned most of her stillnesses by then, and this one cost her something to hold. I did not ask what it was. Some nights, you simply wait for the door to open on its own. I have never said this to a living person, she said. Not once, in 40 years. I want you to know that before I say it, so you understand what it is you are being given. I said nothing. There was nothing worth saying yet. The gray room down the hall stayed gray. The crack in the little painted box on the mantel, the one that has been widening since I moved in, did not move that I could see. but the flat itself had gone very still, the way it goes when she is spending something she cannot easily replace. Her hands were cold before she started, and colder by the time she reached the middle of it. I did not touch them. This was not a moment for warming anything. Julian Harrow killed her. She said it flat, the way she flattens everything that would otherwise break her, and it took me a moment to understand she meant herself. He kept the dowry, she said. He and his people built a family's fortune on a story the whole city was relieved to believe, because a runaway bride is a far easier thing to live with than the truth. I thought of the figure at the foot of her last ledger page, the one I had run against 9 years of kitchen wages the night before. A family had turned that into a fortune, and had 40 years to spend it, while the woman who wrote the figure down was told she never even existed. She did not say how. I did not ask. Some sentences are already as full as a person can carry, and asking for more would have been its own kind of cruelty. I finally had a word the city had never once used in 40 years. Murder. I did not say it out loud. She had earned the right to be the one who said it, and she already had. I wanted to move, to cross that kitchen and do something with my hands. Fix a thing, promise a thing, anything at all. I stayed where I was and let her finish. 40 years, she said, and her voice thinned on the number in a way I had not heard from her before. 40 years of being the woman who ran. I let them believe it, because the truth had nowhere to go and no one to carry it. I have a name to carry it now, I said. That was the whole of what I offered her, and it was the only true thing I had. She looked at me a long moment, the kind of look that costs a person something to give. Thank you, she said, and the word came out smaller than I had ever heard a word come out of her. The room stayed quiet after that, and I did not try to fill it. She did not cry, if that is even a thing still left to her. Neither of us reached for the ledger again. Neither of us said anything else worth writing down that night. I sat with her until the quiet stopped being heavy and became something closer to rest. My whole contribution to that hour was staying in my chair. It did not feel like enough. It was, apparently, exactly enough. Because eventually she asked if I was tired, and I understood the question was really about her. I said I could stay up as long as she needed. She said she didn't need that, not tonight, and told me to sleep. I did, eventually, though the 2 words in that flat sentence stayed with me a long time. 2 days on, I went back to Pell's office. Not for the rent, which wasn't due, but because I had a question that had nothing to do with a lease. His office was as narrow as I remembered. 1 window over the shoe repair, the brass plate on the door older than my father. A second chair sat against the wall, and it had clearly not been sat in by many people. He offered it to me this time. Sit, he said. You have never asked me a real question that wasn't about the building. I looked at the shelf behind him while I gathered what I actually meant to say. 40 years of receipts and rent books, kept in order, kept quiet. A man could spend a whole life being the only one who knew a thing and never once get to put it down. I don't have one about the building, I said. I want to ask about my own family if you'll let me. He set his pen down, which for Pell is the same as another man leaning forward. I told him about my grandfather, how the man went quiet at any mention of the family, ours, in a way that had embarrassed me as a boy, and only made sense to me lately. He never explained it. Nobody in my family ever pushed him to. Pell sat with that a moment. What was his trade, he said. Plumbing supplies, I told him, then a hardware counter, then nothing much at all. He asked what he was called before he was called Marsh. I didn't know there was a before, I said. Pell's hands, for the second time in my life, were not steady. He looked at me the way you look at a resemblance you have been refusing to see for weeks. You have his jaw, he said. I have known that since your first week in this building and told myself it was nothing. It is easier to call a thing nothing than to say it out loud to a stranger. Vain, he said. Cousin's line, a generation removed from her father. I turned the shape of it over in my mouth. My grandfather changed the name the year after the wedding and left Gravenford. Pell nodded once, like a man setting down a weight he had carried further than he meant to. Nobody living has asked me that in 40 years either, he said. I have kept 2 facts in 2 separate drawers my whole working life, because nobody ever handed me a reason to open both at once. You just did. I asked if anyone else still living knew it. No one who would say it, he said. Then he corrected himself. No one who would say it and mean it kindly. I thought of my grandfather at our own dinner table, going quiet and far off the moment anyone said the word family, my father telling him to leave it, and nobody ever once telling me why. I had spent 20 years reading that silence as shame. It was closer to grief, and grief for a house he could never again admit to missing. I am the last of them. Besides her, I said, and it did not feel like a discovery so much as a door that had always been unlocked and never once tried. Pell allowed himself the nearest thing to a smile I had seen on him. I am an old man who has kept a great many silences for people who never once said thank you, he said. Let me have this one moment of saying a true thing to somebody who actually wanted it. I sat with him another minute before I stood to go. He did not offer to write anything down, and I did not ask him to. Some facts don't need a file. This one only needed a mouth willing to say it. Walking back, I turned the last month over in my head, and it looked different from this side of it. Every plan I had made since week 1 had been about keeping a roof over a woman nobody else would keep. That was still true. It had simply stopped being the whole of it. I was not only keeping a home anymore. Somewhere between a wedding ledger and an old man's silence, I had picked up a name that needed restoring, and it covered both of us now, not only her. I thought of Julian's engagement dinner, still unanswered on my fridge, and felt something shift in how I read it. His family's comfort had a price tag on it now that I could actually name, even if nobody at that dinner would ever hear me say it. I did not know yet what restoring a name would actually require of me. I only knew the shape of the debt had changed, and it now carried my own signature on it too. I did not tell her that yet. Some changes need a day to settle into a person before they are fit to hand to somebody else. Dario was on the stairs when I got back, phone in hand, wearing the face he makes when something has actually happened, instead of something he has invented. I got a call, he said. Not about us, about him. A contact of his, a stringer who covers property for one of the local papers, had spent the afternoon fielding calls from somebody arranging a schedule. Dario said it plainly. He is coming here himself. Not a letter. Not Vance. Him, in person, soon. When? I asked. Dario didn't know exactly, only that the stringer wanted a comment ready before it happened. Personal, Dario said again, like the word itself worried him. Not Vance standing on the landing being decent about it. Him. I asked if the stringer said why now. Dario shook his head. Deadline of his own, is all anyone would say. I told him no comment, the way I always do, and he went back down the stairs already typing. You look terrible, Dario said halfway down. Do you want to talk about any of it? I told him not tonight. He didn't push, which by now I have learned is the whole of what makes him worth keeping around. I stood on the landing a while after he had gone. 2 truths in 1 week was more than I had carried in 27 years, and now a third thing was coming up my stairs, whether I was ready for it or not. Inside, Odette was at the window, the ledger still closed on the table. She did not ask what Dario had wanted. I did not tell her, not because I was keeping it from her the way things had once been kept from me, but because some nights only have room for one truth changing hands, and this one had already spent hers. I sat down across from her and said nothing at all, which for once felt like exactly the right amount to say. Whatever was coming up those stairs would come when it came. Tonight, there were only the 2 of us, quieter than we had been that morning, and carrying a great deal more than either of us had been a week before. I told her before the kettle boiled, because if I waited I would dress it up. The cousin who changed his name the year after your wedding, I said. He was my grandfather. Odette stood at the window with her back to me and did not turn round. Say it again, she said. So I said it again, the way Pell said it to me. Flat, with nothing kind in it. Her hand came off the sill, and the glass held the shape of it in fog a second, then let it go. She asked what he did. Plumbing supplies, then a hardware counter, then nothing. Did he come back here? She said. I didn't know. My whole share of the answer ran to 3 sentences. There was a cousin, she said. Older than me. They stopped saying his name at table, and I was too well brought up to ask why. I thought it was money. The family was always careful about its name, she said, as though they were all still alive to be embarrassed. I am going to think about it, she said. A woman 40 years dead, deciding whether to believe a true thing. She went down the hall to the gray room and stood in it. I didn't ask her again. Dario came at 10 with the camera bag and a theory. He gets one a fortnight. This was his best. It's an art project, he said. It's you. You're the piece. His evidence was a woman in Turin who lived a year in a gallery with a goat. Durational, he said. The building is the frame, the cold is the medium, and you've been doing performance art for 3 months without being told. And the doors, I said. Grants, he said. There is serious money in grants. On the Tuesday, I had a prep shift. 6 till 2. Cash, at a bakery whose owner doesn't ask about my last kitchen. Dario films the walk back. It's a bit, and it goes out live. 3,000 people watched me put my key into a lock that would not take it. Somebody said I had it upside down. I turned it over and tried it upside down. The brass was new. 2 of them, a cylinder and a hasp, bright as a coin against that black paint. The old lock lay in the gutter with its screws still in it. While I was at work, they changed the locks. I stood outside my own building with a bag of flour and a camera on me and the number in the corner of the screen climbing for 3 hours. Nothing happened in any of them. Mrs. Okafor came back from the market at 3:30, and her key wouldn't take either. 51 years in that building. She worked it back and forth as though the fault were the keys, then stopped and said, "Well, that is the part to keep, not me, her." Above me, the fourth window went up 2 inches and stopped. The glass of the street door fogged from the inside, 1 handspan, at head height. Celeste's seal cuts the stairs. From there, that was the whole of what she had. I hammered on the door and shouted up at the window. That is the clip. 9 seconds of a man beating on a building his own name is on. I caught myself before the name. You can watch it happen. Mouth open, then shut. Chat asked who I was shouting to. I said the pipes. Sam came at 8 with the order for 2 he has been signing for 11 weeks with the face of a man doing long division. He looked at the door. He looked at the old lock. He did 3 things. He unclipped his front light and clamped it to the railing so she wasn't sitting in the dark. He put the bag in her lap and wouldn't take the money. Then he turned to the camera he had never once acknowledged. "I've delivered to this door 40-odd times," he said. "He pays cash. He tips exact. One night he sent me home with soup for my mum. I don't know what you lot have decided this is, but the man lives here." Then he was gone. 6 more drops, and the app doesn't care. 90 seconds, and the best thing that happened to me that week. Her niece came for Mrs. Okafor at midnight. I stayed on the step till 8. Because a man who sleeps somewhere else has somewhere else. At 8, I borrowed Dario's drill and bought a cylinder for $31. It took 40 minutes and looked exactly like what it looked like. A man drilling the lock out of a door while 3 people filmed him. I had 3 keys cut at the shoe place. 1 for her, 1 for me, 1 on a nail inside her door for whoever needs it. Nobody undid the rest of it. There is nobody to undo it with. Some watched the 9 seconds. Some watched the 40 minutes. For 4 days, the street and the chat argued about which of those was me, and both sides had watched it. The greengrocer stopped putting the bruised stuff aside. Somebody in the local group called me unstable, which was fair on the evidence. A man who had sent $5 a week since spring wrote to say he felt had. The mothers on the school-run corner had views about locksmiths and brought a flask down on the Thursday. She asked one evening what his first name had been. I told her. She said it back once, the way you test a word in a language you used to have, and went to find something to do in the other room. Friday, Dario came up the stairs holding his phone out like it was hot. 3 lines on it, and no human being anywhere in them. Sustained off-platform conduct. Not one word about a door. That was the day the platform dropped me. The big one with the money and 9/10 of the audience. The month's payout was $1,140 and it went into review for 90 days. Dario mirrored what he could to the small site. 900 of 3,000 came across, and the chat that night was kind and almost empty. He didn't mention art projects again. Then he asked what to do about his rent, a word he'd kept out of my kitchen for months. That night, the second bedroom went gray to the doorframe, and the crack in the painted box on the mantel had run on another inch. Her hands were cold. I spent the gas money on the hearth and held them, which by then was, for the look of it, not the heat. "There is a man coming up my stairs," she said. "He will stand in my door." Then, "You asked me for something in the spring, Eli. I want you to know what it is I'm keeping." He came on the Saturday at 11:10. 2 knocks, 1 knuckle. Vance Okonkwo stayed out on the landing with nothing in his hands. Marcus Harrow pulled his gloves off to shake mine, and his hand was warm. Mine wasn't. He said good morning to Mrs. Okafor by name, and got it right. She stood 3 steps down and came no further, because she never does. He didn't come in. He wiped his feet on the mat and stayed on his own side of it for 11 minutes. Dario stood by the dead rig with his arms folded, saying nothing, which for him is an event. $250,000, he said. To you. Movers, deposit, 6 months paid somewhere with heating that works. Mrs. Okafor, the same terms, and I'd rather she heard it from me than in a letter. He said the number before he took the paper out of his coat. My grandfather bought this row in '86, he said. He used to say a building belongs to whoever will be unpopular about keeping it standing. 3 weeks of that is enough. I'd like to stop. I had known for 2 days what his grandfather bought it with. Standing in my own doorway, I said nothing about it, and that is the most expensive nothing I have ever kept. About Tuesday, he said. That isn't how I'd have done it. He didn't say it hadn't been done for him. He wasn't going to lie about a lock I had in my pocket. $31 gone on a cylinder. A bag of flour, no channel. $250,000 is 9 years of what a kitchen paid me. I did the arithmetic where he could watch, then did it again to be sure I wasn't refusing out of temper. No, I said. He waited. People say more. The number's fair, I said. It isn't mine to take. He asked whether I'd like to hear a larger one. I said he could name any figure he had, and the answer came out the same length. I told him no with nothing left. No platform, no month's money, 4 days of a street deciding I was a nuisance. It is the only piece of that week I would keep. Mrs. Okafor said from 3 steps down, "No thank you, Mr. Harrow." Then she went into her own flat and we all heard the chain go on and nobody pretended not to have. Then the landing went cold, not draft cold, the sort that comes up the backs of your legs and puts a man's breath out white in a heated building at 11 in the morning. The fitting over his head turned a quarter turn and stopped. "Don't," I said, not to him. The cold went out of that hall like water out of a bath, and behind me something small gave up with a noise like a tooth. She could have had him. He stood 2 feet inside her reach, the only one of them who has ever come himself. And I asked her in the spring never to touch the living for me. She didn't. Marcus looked at the light fitting a while. Then he folded the paper into 3, put it away, and said, "Right," like a man correcting a figure. On the stairs, he told Vance quietly, "And a stairwell carries. He's not a hustler. He believes it. That's worse. There's no price on that." At the street door, he stopped, looked back up the well, and asked whether the heating was off. Vance said it was on. He'd felt the pipes coming in, and Vance won't lie about pipes. "Cold building," Marcus said, and went out to the car, rubbing his hand. The warm one. She was at the kitchen window when I came up. "I had him," she said. "I know," I said. Then, remember afterwards that I could have and did not. It is the only debt of hers I can pay. By Sunday, I had rung 11 kitchens. 2 said no as a kindness. The rest didn't say anything. I put my name down for hours, weekends, one-offs, anything that paid on the day. $1 falls due on this flat on the 1st of the month. I have never once been frightened of that dollar. That week, I counted the coins for it twice. Dario packed the dead rig on Sunday night. Then he said the thing he'd carried up the stairs all evening. "They can't seal a woman who isn't there," he said. "Go on camera. Say the flat's empty. Say you rigged all of it, and the whole thing dies in a day." I asked him to go home. He went. I fed the hearth with what was left of the gas money. She came and put her hand on the back of my neck, and it was nearly warm, which is the only measurement I trust. I did not tell her what he had said. 13 weeks in that flat, and I had never kept a thing back from her. I told myself that was the same as not having thought it, and I sat with it until the fire went down. An agency texted Monday. 1 shift, cash at the door, no questions about a channel. A private dinner out at the river, one of the 2 hotels the Teague Zone, hired for the night. Prep and pass, 8 hours, $40. I said yes before she'd finished typing the address. Dario didn't think much of it. "You could make more panhandling outside your own gate," he said. I said the 40 was guaranteed. He didn't have an answer for that. Tuesday. I was on the pass by 6, elbow to elbow, with 2 agency men who'd worked 40 of these nights and would work 40 more, neither of them looking at me twice. Julian came through the service corridor at 9:30, in a good coat, looking for the bar staff and finding me instead. He pulled up short, the bar staff forgotten mid-thought. "Well," he said, "Aunt Connie said you were catering now." I didn't think she meant it literally. He laughed once, short and not kind. And a woman by the ice machine looked over and then didn't. Seraphine was 2 steps behind him in the gray she wears to these things, hands folded, not looking at either of us. Nobody had told her to come inside. She came in because he walked and she walked. She never comes anywhere without one of them walking her in. That was Julian's ticket through the door, and the choice he'd end up paying for. He asked how the ghost business was doing. I said the lamb here was good. He should try it. He didn't like that I'd given him nothing to work with. And he doesn't hide that as well as he thinks he does. A driver came through with the last of the delivery on a hand trolley, wine and the dessert order stacked 4 crates high and strapped for the ramp. A little domed camera sat over the roller door, aimed at the bay, ordinary, there for insurance and nothing else. Julian looked at the stack a second longer than it needed. Then he said her name, easy, like flagging a waiter. Seraphine. Not a corner, not dropped low so the room wouldn't catch it. He told her to do it in front of everyone, in the loading bay, in front of the driver, the 2 agency men, and me. "Make sure none of that goes out tonight," he said. She stood a half-second longer than the order needed. I've seen her hesitate exactly once before, over a fitting she'd been told to leave. This ran longer than that. Then she went to work on it exactly as she'd worked a dining table 5 years back. 4 plates down in 20 seconds, none of it looking like effort. Straps came off in 1 motion each. The top crate went over clean, onto the second, onto the third, in a rhythm too even for a hand. Glass went all at once, not gradually. The dessert boxes split their own tape without a finger on them. It took under 4 seconds and looked like nothing had been thrown. The driver said something I won't try to spell. One of the agency men had his phone up before the last box hit the concrete, not filming me. Filming the mess. Somebody needs to see this, he said. Somebody needs to call the office. I stood at the pass door with a tray in my hands and didn't move toward either of them. He's 24 and I'm nobody he answers to, and there was nothing in that bay I was owed a piece of. Julian didn't look pleased exactly. He looked like a man checking that a debt had been collected, which is a different face entirely. He said something to her too low for the bay to catch, and she went back to standing, hands folded again, not looking at him. The agency called it in 20 minutes later. A spilled delivery, nobody's fault named yet, and no more hours tonight for either of us on shift. I was paid for 6 of the 8 in cash, by a manager who wanted the night finished more than she wanted the arithmetic right. I didn't argue that one either. Julian was gone before I left the bay. I never went looking for him and never said his name to anyone in that building. It cost me the other 2 hours' pay to leave it exactly where it sat, and it was the cheapest thing I did all week. By Wednesday, the crowd at our own gate was bigger than it had been since the locks. 3 phones I didn't know, a man with a real camera and a lanyard, 2 women with folding chairs, like it was a parade route. Celeste's people had the certification on the board for Friday. Cameras invited, a crew booked, the word gone round the street for a week. Everybody wanted to be standing there for whatever it turned out to be. Thursday morning, somebody had a hand flat on Mrs. Okafor's door before I got down the stairs. I only wanted a look, he said. Want it from the pavement? I said, and he did, once I'd said it twice. By Thursday night, the small site had 11,000 people waiting on Friday, more than the big platform ever gave me at once. That's good news, Dario kept saying. That's the actual problem, I said. I went down to the gate that evening, with the phone already live, meaning only to ask them to leave off till morning. 4 of them stood there, patient, filming a shut door like it might do something on its own. She was in the hall behind me. I felt her there, a draft you stop noticing until it moves again. The corridor was still half hers that night. It wouldn't be by Sunday. I don't know which sentence I meant to say first. What came out was the other one, that there is no resident, that there never was one, that the phenomena were rigged from the first week. Fishing line, a timer, a heater on a lag switch, built because a dead flat gets no clicks, and I needed the clicks. Somebody laughed. Somebody said finally. The man with the lanyard lowered his camera like it had stopped being his job. I kept talking because stopping halfway would have looked like the truth. I gave them the arithmetic of it, same as I give everything else. 3 months, 1 man, no crew, no budget for what they'd been crediting me with. I said I was sorry to Mrs. Okafor for the noise it had brought her landing. Behind me, the hall went still in a way it hadn't been still since the boiler went in. Not cold, nothing. I didn't turn round to look at nothing. By Sunday, the small site had the story flipped the other way up. Somebody drew a diagram of the fishing line I'd never used. The 2 with the folding chairs didn't come back. Friday's certification went ahead with half the crowd it would have drawn a week earlier. Celeste's crew filmed a woman with a case walking a corridor nobody believed in anymore, and nobody watched past the first 2 minutes of it. Harrow's account posted nothing that week, for the first time since the locks went in. Dario found the drafts they'd pulled, 3 separate versions, all built around a fraud that had just confessed itself for free. My mother called Saturday morning, warmer than she'd been in 5 years. I know how hard that must have been to say, she said. I'm glad you've stopped. We were all so worried. Stopped what? I said. She didn't have a word for it and didn't need one. It's such a relief, she said, and asked whether I'd come to dinner now that I was myself again. I hadn't been anyone else. I said I'd think about it, which is the sentence I use when I already know and don't want to spend the fight on saying so. 11 tenants before me had gone down those stairs in the night and never come back. I just told 400,000 strangers I was the 12th. The flat was warm when I got up there that night. Nothing wrong with it. That was the wrong part. She wasn't at the window and she wasn't at the sink. I found her standing in the gray room, still, like someone who has stopped asking a room for anything. I said her name. She said mine back, precise as Pell reciting a client's name. Then she asked whether I'd eaten and went to see to it, and that was the whole conversation. Kind is the word for it, and kind is worse than cold. Cold I know how to sit with. This had a kettle in it and nothing behind the kettle. She'd told me once what happens to a woman who lets herself be seen. I hadn't believed there was a second half to that sentence until I watched her live inside it for 4 straight days. Celeste came Sunday to close what was left of it. 4 seals still open, the kitchen threshold, the bathroom window, the last foot of the hall, the frame of the gray room itself. She did them in that order, on her knees, writing numbers on the back of her wrist. She worked without hurrying, methodical as ever, and told me each one before her hand touched the wood. "This will take the kitchen, Mr. Marsh. I'd rather you heard it from me than felt it go." When she pressed the last strip flat against the gray room's frame, half the building went quiet all at once, like a held breath finally let go. "It has not since," answered a kettle before I've put one on myself. Celeste stood a moment with her palms still flat on the wood. Then she said, more to the frame than to me, that she'd closed 30 houses and never once felt one go this politely. She wrote it down anyway. Her creed doesn't have a box for polite. I didn't ask her to stop. I'd spent the one thing I had to spend keeping a crowd off a shut door, and I couldn't spend it twice in the same week keeping the last of the flat for a woman who'd already decided what my sentence meant. I ate standing at the counter that night with the light off, every burner on a low blue flame for nobody. Something answered me from the hall, small, correct, warm, as the whole flat had been warm since Saturday. The exact temperature of a woman being perfectly, unreachably kind to a man who'd told the whole world she didn't exist. Nothing in that kitchen said one word to me that hadn't already been said to 11 other tenants before it went quiet on them too. 6 days of it now. My shirts came off the line folded before I remembered I'd hung them. The bath ran to the exact heat I like, and never a degree warmer. Nothing was wrong with any of it, and I had stopped expecting it to feel like anything else. I said good morning to the flat, like you'd greet a hotel room. It said good morning back, correctly, and got on with making my breakfast disappear at the right pace. Monday. A van I didn't know pulled up outside the railing at 8. 2 men, in Harrow Group vests, a third in a good coat who didn't put one on, carrying a clipboard nobody had asked him to bring. "Structural survey," he said. "Common parts, load-bearing walls, nothing that needs anyone's flat." He had my name already typed on his sheet, and Mrs. Okafor's under it. He introduced himself once, to the air more than to me. "Grigor Voss," he said. "Contracted for the assessment." He said it as a man says a word he's stopped expecting anyone to remember. I asked who was paying for the survey. "Whoever needs it done," he said, and didn't look up from the clipboard. It wasn't rude. It was the truest thing anybody said to me that week. He didn't come near 4B. He went along the ground floor with a little hammer, tapping, and a device that beeped at a wall and didn't beep at the next one. Mrs. Okafor stood in her doorway with her arms folded and didn't offer him a bowl. They were in and gone in under an hour. Quiet about it, nothing broken that I saw. Grigor looked back at the building once from the gate, sizing it up like a job he expected to be doing again. Mrs. Okafor called me down that evening. "There," she said, and put my hand flat on the plaster above her radiator. A hairline, socket to the switch that hadn't been there Sunday. I didn't say the word building at her. I said I was sorry, which was true and cost nothing, and she said save it, and put the kettle on for both of us anyway. Celeste came Tuesday to close her file. Final readings, she said, for Harrow's report. I let her in without asking Odette first, which I hadn't done since the day with the case on the stairs. She went through the flat with her thermometer on its chain, quiet, professional. Writing numbers I've stopped trying to read upside down. Then she stopped in the gray room's doorway and didn't go in. "May I?" she said, the same 2 words from the first morning. This time nobody answered no. The door stood open the width it always had and stayed that width, which in that flat is as good as an invitation. For once, she let the instrument see her. Not all of her. Enough. The ledger open on the sill, entries in a hand that never once let a debt run past its week. A cuff mended so fine, you'd need the light at an angle to find the stitch. Marigolds pressed flat between 2 pages that had gone the color of the flowers. Celeste read it aloud for her own notes, same as she reads everything, and didn't hear herself doing it. Accounts kept current, mending done by someone who expected the coat to be worn again. A household run, she said, for one particular man, over years. Then she stopped writing. She stood with the pen off the page a long moment. In a doorway she'd been reading as weather with a memory for 3 months, and didn't finish the sentence she'd started. "I've read 30 houses," she said. "Not to me exactly. I have never once found a personality in the residue." She looked at the marigolds again, and put them back exactly as they'd lain. She left without her usual line about the corridor. That was the whole of it. She didn't say what she thought she knew, and I didn't ask her to. I'd stood in the kitchen doorway the whole time, and said nothing to either of them. She hadn't once looked at me to see whether I approved of what she was showing Celeste, and I didn't offer an opinion she hadn't asked for. She came back Thursday evening, no case this time, and stood on the landing rather than come in. "I went through Harrow's tenant file," she said. The one they gave me before I ever climbed these stairs. 11 names on it, injuries logged against this address, to show the board a building already hurting people before I arrived. I called 4 of them. 2 have never lived in this city. 1 of them is a street. Somebody in that office had decided, long before any of this, that they wrote up injuries that never happened, to make the job feel clean before anyone did it. I have been paid to bless a lie for 3 months, she said, and I have been very good at my work. What will you do with it, I asked. Nothing yet, she said. I want to be sure it's a lie all the way down before I burn a client for it. Then she said goodnight and went down the stairs, unhurried as always, not looking like a woman carrying anything. My mother called Friday, not warm this time. Different voice, the one she uses when she's already decided to say less than she knows. Julian had people over the footage from that dinner, she said. Some trouble with a delivery. I asked what kind of trouble. She said your father asked him twice how a girl who's never touched a thing in that house managed to tip 4 crates over herself. He said she gets overzealous. He said it twice. She asked, carefully, whether I'd heard anything about it myself. I said I didn't keep up with that side of the family. It wasn't quite a lie, and she let it stand as one anyway. And you believed him, I said. There was a silence long enough to answer for her. Whatever he told them, they did not believe him this time, not as they always had before. And she knew I'd heard that in her voice as clearly as if she'd said it. I didn't tell her I'd been standing at the pass door the whole time. It would have cost her something to hear, and bought Odette nothing, and I have gotten good this month at arithmetic like that. Saturday, a car I recognized from the valuation stood at the corner with its engine running, Constance in the passenger seat, not looking at the building directly. Seraphine crossed the road alone, and came as far as the railing. She didn't say Eli or Mr. Marsh or anything at all. Seraphine put the photograph in my hand, and was back across the road before I had it turned the right way up. My grandmother on the front step, 9 years old, a swimming certificate rolled under one arm. The car pulled off before I'd found a word for either of them. I stood at the railing with a photograph that had been missing since Julian carried it up from a box in the spring, and nobody left to thank for it. She hadn't been told to bring it. Nobody who trains a spirit to fold a napkin 4 ways teaches her to give a stolen thing back for nothing. It cost her something she couldn't put a number on, which for once made 2 of us. I took it upstairs and set it on the mantel, in the space where the cracked box already sat. Odette didn't ask where it had come from. She looked at it a while from the doorway and went back to whatever she'd been doing before I came in. I didn't try to talk to her that week. I'd used up the one conversation I was owed the night I told the whole world she wasn't real, and nothing I could say now was going to buy it back cheaper. So I cooked that same evening. The pork bones again, 5 hours down, same as that first month, and I left the door of the flat open the whole time so the smell went down every hall Celeste hadn't sealed. I scrubbed the grout in the bathroom on my knees, which needed doing and had needed doing for a month. I mended my own cuff badly, on purpose slow, at the table where she could see the thread if she wanted to. None of it was a sentence. I had learned that much. Explaining myself again would have been for me, not her, and I was done doing things for me and calling it care. Sunday morning I went down to look at Mrs. Okafor's wall again in daylight. The crack had grown an inch since Monday. Hairline still, patient, the kind of damage that doesn't announce what it's for. Grieger's van came back twice that week without stopping. Slow along the railing both times. A man doing the arithmetic on a building before he's told to do anything about it. Mrs. Okafor didn't call me down again after that first evening. When I offered to look at the wall myself, she said leave it, in a voice that had already decided something she wasn't telling me yet. Sunday night the tap ran 1 degree warmer than it had the night before, which is not a thing water does on its own in that building. I didn't mention it. Mentioning it would have made it mine, and it wasn't offered to me. It was decided by her. I ate at the counter and left a plate out I didn't need to leave out, like leaving a light on for somebody who hasn't said what time they're coming home. Nobody touched it. It was still warm 2 hours later, which nothing in that kitchen manages on its own. I stood in the kitchen that night and did the sum myself, the only kind I trust. A cracked wall downstairs. A woman upstairs who'd decided what my one sentence meant and was not going to be argued out of it by a man she could hear breathing through a wall she'd sealed herself. Whatever was coming for this building next, the only one who could have stopped it cold wasn't speaking to me and had every right not to be. Dario's whole operation that Thursday was a phone in my kitchen window, propped in a cracked mug, and a link he had handed round the street by mouth. 61 people watching. 2 months earlier that hour ran 8,000. Cook something loud, he said from the doorway. 61 is a dinner party. Give them a dinner party. I had onions, a thumb of ginger, and the end of a bag of rice. New theory, he said. Last one. Then I retire. You're a protected witness. The state parked you here, and she's your handler. She was standing 4 feet from him. I said so. Exactly what a handler would say, he said. She stood at the end of the counter. On the last inch, Celeste's work left her. Hands folded. Face doing nothing. I cooked loudly at her anyway. You do that at a hospital bed too, and it works about as well. Then the smell came up the stairs. Not smoke. Thinner than smoke, and sweeter, the flat chemical smell of a garage floor. It gets to you first. It means somebody downstairs has finished pouring. I moved the pan off the ring. Dario stopped mid-sentence, which he had never once done for me. Take the phone outside, I said. Courtyard. Don't come back in. She reached the doorway ahead of me and stopped with her hand flat on the frame. Whatever politeness had been doing to her face, it stopped doing it. 2 of them, she said. Street door. How far down can you get? The 3rd step, she said. Celeste's line ran across the ground floor. The hall, the door, the bottom 2 steps belonged to nobody now. Above that was hers, and thin. I went down. Mrs. Okafor's door is on the 1st landing, and she was hauling at her own handle from inside. It would not move. Stay in there. It won't open, boy. I know. Stay. Then the cold arrived. It came down the stairwell the way water finds a drain. No wind, all at once. My breath went white, and frost took the rail ahead of my hand. On the 3rd step, flat in the new frost, was her hairpin. From the turn I could see the hall, a can on its side, rags packed under the staircase. 2 men. One had a lighter out. It caught. A low blue line ran the skirting and up the grain of the bottom step. For a second it looked like nothing. Then it looked like the end of everything I had. Then the air went out of it, not blown out, emptied. The flame sank into the wood, flattened, stopped being a flame. What was left was a wet black line and a smell. The one with the lighter tried again. 11 times. I counted because counting was all I had from where I stood. The wheel sparked every time and nothing took. Wood's damp, the other one said. A working voice. A man explaining a job to himself so it stays a job. It was not damp. It had eaten the first flame in a second. So the lighter man went up to start it higher, where the timber is dry. 2 steps. Then the cold, and a sound out of him I have not managed to describe since. He went for the half-glazed door at the landing anyway. Both hands, shoulder in. It did not move for him. Mrs. Okafor's door, a yard left, did not move either. He came down faster than he went up. That is when I stepped onto the 3rd step and let them see me. 2 men who have been looked at, do not stay. That was the whole of my courage. The empty can was by my foot. I threw it out through the open street door, into the courtyard, where Dario stood with the phone. They went out after it. Either way, they went. I got as far as the railing and stopped. I do not cross it on a night like that. By the time my hands were steady, they were into a car. Grigor Voss was leaning on that car. He did not run. He gave me the look a man gives a late delivery, got in, and it pulled off at a legal speed. Dario got the whole street on the restream. Not her. The phone has never taken her, and it did not take her that night. It took white air in a courtyard, a can rolling on brick, a street door swinging open on nobody's hand. Somebody phoned it in and phoned back to say, never mind. 61 people had been watching me not make dinner. By breakfast, there were 4,200, and the clip had reached 3 streets I have never walked down. The street came out in coats over pajamas and lined up along the railing, which it had never once done for me. Nobody came in. They stood there and asked each other the questions I had spent a month failing to make anybody ask. They were not arguing about whether I was a fraud. That question had been my whole month, and it was gone inside an hour, and nobody announced it. They were arguing about what they saw, the white air, the door that opened on nobody, whether a man pours a can and then loses his nerve, or whether something takes it off him, and who hands a man a can. Dario sat on the courtyard step with the phone still running. I'm out of theories, he said. He has not offered me one since, and I miss them. Inside, I did the walk. The 2nd floor hall had gone gray while I was on the stairs. Gray is not dark. It is a room with the life let out of it. You put a hand on that wall, and the wall is not cold. It is nothing. 4 rooms, and the back stair to the 2nd turn. 2 plates from her dowry set had hairline cracks across the glaze that were not there at dinner. The little clock had one through the face. I put the plates back in the rack because there was nowhere better. She was sitting down in the kitchen, which she almost never does. Is the old woman all right? No question mark on it. Her door wouldn't open. I know, she said. I was holding it. Her hand, when I set mine beside it, was colder than the rail had been. She moved it into her lap before I could decide anything about that. Mrs. Okafor knocked on 4B at 1 in the morning, which she had refused to do for 18 weeks. She did not come in. She stood on the landing with a covered pot against her hip. Downstairs, she said. Her kitchen is the warmest room on that plot. and she has fed me in it more often than I have paid rent. The crack their survey put in her wall runs from socket to ceiling. A calendar hangs over the middle of it. She put a bowl in front of me and did not sit down. Tonight someone tried to burn the building, she said, with me in it, and you in it, and that girl in it. Then she took the Bible off the shelf above the radio. It has a rubber band round it because the spine is gone. She opened the back where the names are written in and drew out a paper folded 3 times. My husband's name was Ezra, she said. She did not say anything else for a while. I did not fill it in for her. She stood with both hands on the back of a chair and did not sit down in it. 1986, she said, the week of that wedding. A man came to this door with cash in an envelope and a good coat and told me he was Mr. Harrow's foreman, Julian Harrow's. Ezra took it. For what? Half a day, she said. He was home by 2. Ezra bricked up a wall in 4B, in the week of that wedding, for cash, for Julian Harrow's foreman. What went behind it he never told her. She never asked. He wrote it out in his own hand while he was dying, and she has kept the paper in a Bible for 40 years. He was a good mason and a bad liar, she said. He came home that afternoon and washed his hands twice and would not eat what was in front of him. 40 years I thought that was the drink starting. It was not the drink. I thought I was keeping his name, she said. I was keeping theirs. She pushed the paper over the oilcloth with 2 fingers, already decided, and did not take them off it until I picked it up. If I take this, they come at you. They came at me tonight. She sat down then, hands shaking, and put my spoon back into my hand. Eat, she said. It has gone cold twice. I washed the bowl and the spoon and set them on her rack, because there was nothing else in that room I could do for her. She let me. She sat with the Bible open and the rubber band round her wrist. I did not go up and look at the wall. That was not discipline. I sat there until 3:30 and could not have told you which wall it was. When I told her upstairs, she went still, not quiet, still the way a room goes when the fridge cuts out. She asked one thing. Which room? I did not know. Mr. Pell came at 9 with his copy of the lease under his arm because the street had been talking since 7. I told him about the envelope, the foreman, and the wall. He asked one question. Which week? The week of the wedding. He sat down on the wet bottom step in a good coat and said nothing for a long time. He is 81, and he had walked. Harrow's people came at 9:30, not Marcus. A tall man called Okonkwo, who does the talking for him, and the woman from the corner shop filming from 6 feet away. She asked him straight out whether the company had sent men with a can. He said it had authorized nothing of the kind. He said a contractor engaged for site work had gone well outside his instructions. Then he used the name. Before 10 in the morning, on a public pavement, to a woman holding up a phone, they were already blaming Grigor. She asked him to say it again for the recording. He said it again. Grigor Voss stood at the curb through all of it with his hands in his coat. Nobody asked him to move. Nobody looked at him while it was said. He heard the whole sentence twice. He did not argue. He did not move for a minute. Then he looked across the railing at me, and not at Okonkwo, and got into his car. I know that face from Kitchens. The street did not go quiet. It got loud in a new direction. The corner shop woman who had spent a month calling me a fraud told Okonkwo to get off her pavement. In the afternoon, I walked the building again and wrote the count on the back of the rice bag, because a thing you write down stops being a feeling. 4 rooms gray, backstair gray to the second turn, 6 pieces cracked, 4 plates, the little clock, and the lid of the sugar box. She could not lift a pan lid in the morning. She managed it in the evening, 3rd attempt, and then looked over to see whether I had watched her do it. I said the rice was ready. Dario had picked the can up off the brick and left it outside my door. There was a price sticker on the side of it, $9.40. That is what it costs to try. $9.40, a lighter, and 2 men who will do it for a day's pay. 4 rooms, 6 cracked pieces, and a woman who needs 3 attempts at a pan lid. That is what it costs to stop it. Anybody with $10 can go again. I put the can under the sink and slept with the light on, in a flat with a wall in it I had never once properly looked at. 3 days after the fire, I still could not look at the wall in the room I sleep in. So I looked at everything else instead. The crack in the sugar box lid. The clock that had stopped and stayed stopped. 4 rooms gone the color of a photograph of themselves. None of them back yet. Odette took 3 tries most mornings to lift a pan lid off a pot. She had stopped hiding the 2nd and 3rd tries from me, which told me more than the tries did. Neither of us said the word budget out loud. We both knew what the number was, and neither of us liked it. On the third night, I was scraping a pan that did not need scraping when I said the thing I had not said since Friday. $9.40, I said. That is what it costs to try again. I am done waiting to find out what the next $9 buys, I said. She did not answer from wherever she was. I put the pan down harder than I meant to. I am going to go down there tomorrow and say all of it, I said. Your name, the wall, Pell, the wedding that never happened. Whoever is holding a phone can have it. I got my coat off the hook while I was still talking, which is not how I usually decide things. That is why it frightened her. I had my hand on the door before I understood the room had gone cold in the particular way that means she is close and saying nothing. Wait, I said. Odette. That was the moment she sealed the door with me inside. Not a slam. No sound at all. The handle simply stopped being a handle, the way a hand stops being a fist and becomes a stone instead. I put my shoulder to it once, out of a reflex I am not proud of, and felt nothing give anywhere in the frame. If you go down there, they take you too, she said. Her voice came from everywhere in the flat at once, which she had never once done before. I have already lost every door in this city, but this one, she said. I am not losing this one as well. I told her that was not how it worked. A man can walk into a lobby and not be taken by anyone. She said the word lobby back to me, the way you repeat a word in a language you have decided not to trust. Then she said nothing else that night. The first morning, I tried the window over the sink, because it is old wood and has never once fit its frame properly. It fit its frame that morning. I tried the bedroom window, the one at the end of the hall that used to be a stranger's room. The fire escape nobody has used since before I moved in. Nothing in that building had a gap in it anywhere. I did not shout, though I have shouted at that door before, over a locksmith's hasp. Some of the not shouting was pride. Most of it was knowing there was nobody outside to hear it. I cooked, because it is the only thing my hands know how to do when the rest of me has nothing to do. Rice, twice, because rice was what I had. She did not come near the kitchen either day. That was its own kind of statement from a woman who has never once let me cook in a room she was not standing in. By the second day, I had stopped asking when. I sat on the floor of the front room with my back against the radiator, which was on, because whatever this was, she had not stopped keeping me warm. You could let me out and still keep me, I said, to the ceiling, because I did not know where she was. That is not the same thing as never letting me leave. She answered from directly behind me. It is exactly the same thing, she said. I have done the smaller version for 100 years, and it has never once held. I asked her what she thought would happen if I walked to the corner and back. I do not know, she said, and not knowing is the entire problem. A woman who has been wrong about safe exactly once does not get to be wrong about it twice, she said. I did not have an answer to that. I have never had an answer to what actually happened to her. I was not going to invent one now, to win an argument through a door that cannot be argued with anyway. We did not fight after that. We were two people in a flat for the better part of 2 days, one free to move through every room and one free to move through all but the ones with an exit. I do not have a better description of what that felt like. I am not going to dress it up as anything softer than it was. On what I think was the third morning, though I had stopped trusting the Count, I got up off that floor and did not say anything first. I had learned by then that telling her was the same as asking her, and I was not asking. I walked to the door the way I walk to a stove I have lit 100 times. No speech in me, no proof to offer, no bargain, nothing about the wall or the fire or arithmetic. I was not leaving to win an argument. A man who cannot choose to walk to his own door is not being kept. He is being kept down. I had decided, somewhere in those 2 days, which one this was. I put my hand on the handle. Nothing happened for the length of one breath. Then it turned under my hand. Easy, the way it turns for anyone. I walked out. Down 4 flights I did not run. Past the courtyard, past the railing, out through the gate onto a pavement that still smelled faintly of somebody's ruined attempt to burn it. I stood there long enough to feel the whole street around me. Cars, a dog somewhere. A life going on whether or not you are locked into a room above it. I did not go to Harrow's office, though I had said I would. That is a small thing I owe an explanation for and am not going to give one tonight. I turned around. I came back. Up 4 flights, past a door that had let me go and had nothing left to prove by keeping me out now. I put my hand on the same handle, and it gave the way it had given going out. I stood in my own hallway, cold coming off every wall, waiting to see what I had actually done. She was in the kitchen doorway when I came round the turn of the hall. She did not ask where I had been. She already knew, the way she always knows where every door in that building stands. I did not explain myself either. I had watched her spend 2 days deciding what it would mean if I ever got through that door. I was not going to hand her a speech now and undo the only part of it that was true, which is that I chose twice, with nothing stopping me the second time either. Her hands were cold when I took them. Then for about 10 seconds, they were not. I do not know a better proof than that. I have stopped looking for one. You came back, she said. The way you read a number off a scale you do not trust yet. I said yes. She said it again, quieter. I did not say it a third time. Some things only need saying twice to a person who has spent 40 years believing the opposite. We sat at the table that night the way you sit down to do the accounts, because that is the only kind of conversation either of us has ever been any good at. I am not asking you never to be afraid for me, I said. I am asking you to tell me first. Say it to my face before you do it. The way I would have to if I ever left for good. She wanted to know what I would do if I disagreed. I told her the truth. I did not know yet, and not knowing was not the same as her deciding it for both of us. Then I said my half of it, because nothing in that flat has ever been free. I will not go looking for a fight to end this faster than it is ready to end. I will not walk toward Harrow's office, or a camera, or anybody with a phone without telling you first either, I said. That part cost me something too. She took a long time over it. The way Pell takes a long time, because she does not agree to a thing just to end a conversation and never has. When it came in one piece, not folded into pieces the way her other terms usually are. Together then, she said, not instead of me, and not without me. That was the entire negotiation. No document, no witness, nothing Pell will ever be asked to notarize. Just two people at a table, deciding out loud that the locks in that building would only ever be a choice both of us had made. The lights had been out an hour when I understood the cold in that flat had gone somewhere else entirely, and it was not cold anymore. I am not going to describe what happened between the table and the morning. It belongs to the two of us and to no one reading a stream, a clip, or anything else. I will say this much. Her hands, the second time that night, were warmer than they had been the first time, back in the spring. On a night I have never once talked about either. We slept eventually with every blanket in that flat pulled onto the one bed, because the house was still cold, in the ordinary way houses are cold at that hour, and neither of us got up to fix it. Celeste came 2 days later, without Dario's camera and without calling first, which I had never known her to do. She had her case with her, the same flat case from the first week, and worked backward the way she had built it forward. The courtyard door, the first landing, the second, my own door frame. The fourth floor line she once called the highest tether she had ever read. She peeled each strip off with 2 fingers and folded it once before it went into the case. The chalk she rubbed out with the flat of her hand, not a cloth, until her palm was blue to the wrist. She did not complain about it. I am not going to explain this to Mr. Harrow, she said, without turning round. I am simply not going to be here to be asked. She said it in the voice she keeps for numbers. It was the closest I had ever heard that voice come to breaking. Celeste took her own seals down, every one of them, in about 40 minutes. When she finished, the case shut with the sound a good case makes, which is almost no sound at all. I offered her tea. She said no, the way she has always said no to everything in that flat that was not strictly business. We are not going to be friends over this, she said, at the top of the stairs. Half a question. No, I said. But you did the harder thing anyway. She went down the stairs without answering that. From her, the silence is its own kind of answer. That night, I told Odette the thing I had almost done instead of the thing I actually did. I am still going to say your name where it counts, I said. Not tomorrow. Out of temper. To whichever stranger happens to be holding a phone. But when it will actually cost me something. In front of people who cannot pretend they did not hear it. I am not taking that back. I am only agreeing to choose the day together instead of alone. She asked what that would cost me. I did not fully know yet, and for once, that was the honest half of the answer rather than the frightened half. It is the first promise I have made her that I intend to keep in public rather than in a kitchen. She did not ask me to swear to it. She only asked me to say it twice, and I did, and meant it more the second time. Every seal in that building came down inside 1 week. Celeste's by her own hand, mine by walking to a door and walking back through it. The whole of Foxglove Court stood open to the two of us for the first time since I signed a lease for $1 a month. Neither of us went looking that night for what still waited behind the one wall in 4B that had never opened. Some things are worth one more quiet night before you prove them. We stood in the doorway of the room, with the wall nobody has looked at properly since before either of us was born. Neither of us went in first. It is load-bearing, I said. I had gone down and checked the joists myself with a torch while she slept. Take it out wrong and the ceiling comes with it, and the floor after that. Odette said she had thought about little else since Tuesday night. It has waited 40 years, she said. It can wait for us to be careful about it. Nobody is filing anything or clearing anything with anybody, I said. That was not a question, and she did not treat it like one. Two people, deciding, in a room with a torch between them, about the one wall in a building neither of us had ever properly owned. Pell came without being told twice. Mrs. Okafor took longer, because I had to ask her a second time, at her own door, without the answer I wanted the first time. I am not walking into that flat, she said, the way she has said it for months now. Then, a week later, on her own step, arms folded. What time? Nobody made her come. She climbed 4 flights she has not climbed since her hip went, one stair at a time, on her own 2 feet because she had decided to. She stood in my doorway a long moment before she crossed it, the way you stand at the edge of a pool before you know the temperature. 51 years next door, she said, and not once inside. Then she stepped over the threshold herself, without my hand, and without being asked twice. That was the evening we opened the wall, the 4 of us, with 2 hammers, a bolster, and a torch balanced on a chair. Pell held the torch and said nothing, which from him is its own kind of prayer. It came away in the order old brick always comes away. Dust first, then a crumble you can get a thumbnail into, then whole bricks, warm from 40 years of a chimney breast on the other side. Nobody spoke while we worked. I have never known a room in that building stay quiet that long, with 4 living people standing in it. The last brick came away onto the floor, and none of us moved for a while. There was a case inside, leather gone stiff, straps still buckled. A case packed for a journey nobody ever took. 40 years in a wall does that to leather. It had not traveled an inch since the hands that packed it set it down. Beside it, wrapped in linen gone yellow evenly, all over, a ring. Gold. Plain. Never worn. You could tell from the metal, which carried none of the wear a hand puts into gold over even a single year. Nobody performed anything. 4 people stood in a small brick-dusted room and looked at what 40 years of a lie actually looks like, which is smaller and quieter than any of us expected. I did not touch the case. Odette did once with the flat of her hand, the way you touch a stove to see if it is still hot. It was not. She took her hand back anyway. She picked up the ring instead, turned it once so the light ran along the band, and set it back in its linen without a word. Mrs. Okafor said one thing. To nobody in particular. 9 days, she said. My husband knew for 9 days before he told me. I have known for 1 evening, and still cannot make my legs move. Nobody answered her. There was nothing in that room built to answer a sentence like that, and none of us tried to build one on the spot. Pell put the torch down first and did not pick it back up. Mrs. Okafor left the room ahead of the rest of us, which she never does, and stood a long time at the kitchen sink with the tap running over nothing. Nobody said a plan out loud. I watched each of them arrive at the same decision separately, the way 4 strangers in a queue all decide to buy the last umbrella without discussing it. I knew, watching Pell's hands, that whatever he had carried since 1986 was coming out of him on a day none of us had picked yet, and that the day would be Marcus Harrow's, not ours. Pell stayed after the other 2 had gone down. He set a folder on the counter I had not seen him bring in and did not open it yet. There is an instrument, older than either of you, that binds a tenancy to a living person instead of a piece of paper, he said. Voluntary, on both sides, a living signatory, for as long as that person lives. I asked what it would mean for Odette. It would mean the house answers to her, he said, in law as much as law can be made to answer to a thing like her, for as long as somebody with a pulse stands behind it. Why now, I asked him, when you could have brought this folder up 4 flights any week in the last 18? Because you did not ask me for it before tonight, he said. I answer what is asked, Mr. Marsh. I have not volunteered a thing in my life, and I am too old to begin practicing. Nobody is signing anything tonight, he said, closing the folder before either of us could reach for a pen. I am stating terms. That is all a man my age is good for on a first reading. Word had gone round the neighborhood since the fire, in a way no stream of mine ever managed alone. A woman called Ilsa Doyle rang to ask whether the Heritage Society could hold its monthly meeting somewhere other than a cold hall over a bank. I said yes before I had worked out what I was agreeing to feed 26 people on $1 a month kitchen. I have fed harder rooms than that for less warning. They came for a talk about brickwork and stayed for the food, which is the correct order for anything I cook. 26 people at borrowed chairs eating off whatever plates the building had between it, and not one complaint about the mismatch. An elderly man near the window asked twice whether the rumors were true. I told him I only cook and let the room decide what to do with that. Nobody pushed further. Nobody needed to. Ilsa Doyle stood up at the end and said, in front of everybody, that her society would be writing to every paper in the city about a building worth saving. She did not once say the word haunted, and I noticed her not saying it. Donations came in that week faster than the stream ever paid, and every dollar of it went to a roof 2 floors down from mine, and to a wall a survey had cracked in a woman's own kitchen. None of it came near my own account, and I made sure of that myself. Mrs. Okafor's roof stopped leaking onto her landing by the Thursday after. She did not thank me for arranging it, because I had not arranged anything. I had only fed a room, and let the room do arithmetic of its own. By the following Sunday, more people had stood outside that gate in support than Harrow's own team had ever managed to gather against it, and nobody had to be paid to do it. My parents came on a Wednesday, which is not a day they have ever chosen for anything before. My father had a folder of his own, thinner than Pell's, and did not wait to be asked before he opened it. We have been thinking, my mother said, about what would actually help, not $500 this time. A proper start, an advance, my father said, against what would come to you eventually anyway. He called it an inheritance advance, a word his own parents had never once, in 5 years, used with me before. My mother added quickly that it was not charity, as if the distinction had cost her something to draw. I let the number sit on the counter exactly as long as I needed to read it once. No, I said, and this time it took less than a second, because I had done that arithmetic 3 times already, and did not need a 4th. My mother started to say something about being fair to Julian too, and I let her finish it before I answered. I do not want fair to Julian, I said. I want what I have wanted since the first check landed on a table in that house. I said it plainly, not money, a correction, said once and not asked for twice. My father closed the folder without being told to. That was new. In 5 years, I had not seen him close one of his own on the first refusal. Dario brought the news up the stairs 2 days later, out of breath from running rather than the stairs. Harrow announced a groundbreaking, he said. Foxglove Court, press invited, investors flying in for it. A stage over the courtyard, he read off his phone. 3 weeks from Friday, Harrow is calling it a fresh start for the block. In those exact words, in a release with his own name on it. I looked at Odette, who had come to stand in the doorway the way she always does when something outside the building starts to matter inside it. 3 weeks, I said. She said nothing for a while. Then she said she meant to be standing in that courtyard herself, the day it happened, whatever it cost her. I did not talk her out of it. I gave her my word instead, which is worse, and which is what she had actually asked for. Pell's folder was still on the counter where he had left it, unsigned. Beside it sat the ring in its linen, the case with its buckles done up again exactly as we had found them. 3 weeks is not long to wait for a thing that has already waited 40 years. I marked the date on the calendar Mrs. Okafor gave me, in the square for the last Friday of the month, and went back to the stove. She was gray before the trucks came, not pale. Gray, the color the second-floor landing had gone the week the hearth ran down. She stood at the window, and it took her 3 tries to get her hairpin in. I had agreed not to talk her out of it. It is the only promise I ever made that I wanted to break while I was making it. I stood at the sink and kept it. They put the stage up over the courtyard in 2 days. Scaffold, plywood deck, black skirting nailed over the flower beds, 92 folding chairs. A man was out there at 6 steaming a banner. The coffee came from a place on Bellamy Row. I have worked their line. $11 a head, set up for $200. My rent that month was $1. Dario got there at 8, with 2 cameras and an opinion. They're letting press in, he said. They're letting everyone in. That's not confidence. That's a trap. He was wrong about whose. Mr. Pell came in a coat too heavy for the weather and stood at the back with both hands on the rail. Mrs. Okafor brought a folding stool and would not sit on it. We had agreed on nothing out loud, and all 4 of us knew it. Grigor Voss was on the barrier in a high-vis vest with the company name across the back, checking arrivals off a list. He looked at me. I looked at him. Celeste Adler came last, in white, and Harrow's people set her in the front row like a piece of staging. Vance Okonkwo came in behind her with 2 phones and the running order. At 9, Marcus Harrow came up the steps and took the morning. I want to be accurate about that. For 11 minutes he was very good. 2 things and then we dig, he said. Financing closed Tuesday. This block is clear in 11 weeks. Somebody in the second row applauded, and he let it run as long as it helped him. Some of you have watched a video of a door shutting by itself, he said. There is a man living in that building on a lease that costs him $1 a month. He has found an audience. At his age, I would have done the same. He let the pause work. We offered to move him, generously. He wanted more. That is his right, and it is also the entire haunting. I said it from the barrier, loudly, because the barrier was where I was standing. 250,000 and relocation. Your driver was there. I never named a number, because there isn't one. He did not flinch. He looked down at me and smiled like I had helped him. There is always a number, he said. You want a bigger room to say it in. People laughed. He had me, and he was moving again inside 4 seconds. He turned and put a hand out toward the man on his left, the second name on the running order. Vance will take you through the safety work. Vance Okonkwo did not move. He looked at the deck about 3 seconds, then out over the chairs at nothing, hands where they had been. If you were not watching him, you missed it. I was watching, and I did not yet know why it mattered. Marcus turned the hand into a gesture at the building and used a name instead. Most of you know Celeste Adler, he said. She walked this building herself and cleared it. Celeste. She was up the steps before he got to whatever came after her name. Nobody offered her that microphone. She lifted it out of the stand with 2 fingers, as if it were still hot, and turned it to her own mouth. My name is Celeste Adler. Harrow Group paid me $120,000 to walk this building and tell you it was empty. She let 1 beat go by. It is not empty. They also handed me 11 injury complaints from tenants here to show you it was dangerous. I called 4 of the names. 2 of those people have never lived in this city. One of them is a street. A man near the front said her name like a warning. She spoke over him. Everyone who has ever hired me is listening to this. They should stop. They will. She put the microphone back in the stand, straight, exactly as she had found it. 51 seconds. I counted because counting was all I could do with my hands. She came down through the middle of the chairs, and not one person in that row lifted their head. She stopped level with me at the barrier and said nothing at all. We were not friends before that morning, and we are not now. The cold had been at my elbow since 8. Mr. Pell nodded once at the air beside me, which in 60 years he has never done in front of people. Marcus did not lose the room there. He was back on the microphone in 6 seconds, faster than the murmur. Celeste has had a hard year, he said. I am not going to take her apart in front of you. Half of them let him have it. Then a woman in the second row stood up, her coat still creased from the case she flew in with. She used no microphone and needed none. Whose land is this? He should have answered in 1 word. He went and got the paper. There was a tent behind the stage. He came out of it with a plastic sleeve and held it up over his head, turning so the cameras down both sides got a clean look. 1986, he said. The transfer. Signed, witnessed, paid for. My grandfather bought this ground from the family that owned it, and he paid what it was worth. It is in my hand. Mr. Pell is 81. He did not raise his hand. He raised his voice once from the back, the way you would call a dog off a road. That paper is a lie. 200 people turned around to look at an old man in a heavy coat. He waited until they had finished turning. I knew her hand, he said. I watched her write her name more times than I could count. That is not her name on that line, and it never was. I have known it for 40 years and I said nothing. I sat with her father while he died, believing his daughter had robbed him. He stopped. He put nothing after it, because he never does, and let go of the rail. Mrs. Okafor did not want a microphone either. She walked to the front with her stool still in 1 hand, and spoke to Marcus in the voice she keeps for men who knock at her door at a bad hour. In 1986, my husband laid brick on this block, she said. Ezra Okafor. 9 days before he died, he told me what he was paid to do in that building the week after the wedding that never happened. He built a wall in 1 night. He was paid for a week. He would not spend that money. It is in a tin in my kitchen, and I have looked at it every day since. She turned to the chairs then, not to him. He was ashamed for 40 years, and I was ashamed beside him. I am finished being ashamed in front of people who are not. A reporter called out about the fire in the stairwell. Marcus answered fast, because fast was all he had left, and without looking anywhere near the barrier. That man has never been an employee of this company, he said. He is a contractor. Whatever he did on his own, and he will answer for it on his own. Grigor Voss was 11 feet away from him, in the company's vest, holding the company's list. He did not shout. That is what made people turn. He laid the list flat on the barrier. Say that again, he said. I don't know you, Marcus said. You called me from the car about the old woman on the 2nd floor, Grigor said. Twice. He had turned his shoulder. He was talking to the cameras now, not to Marcus. 6,000 for the survey that cracked her wall. 11 for the stairwell. I was paid $11,000 to put a fire in a building with people asleep in it, and I did not get that money from a contractor. I had not planned on the steps. Nobody stopped me on them either, which tells you where that morning had got to. I did not take his microphone. The one Celeste had put back was still in the stand, and I took that. I knew what the next 30 seconds would cost. That arithmetic got done at 5 in the morning at my own counter, and I said it anyway. My grandfather changed our name in 1987 and moved 400 miles and never told his son why, I said. His cousin's family owned this ground, this and the row behind it, and the trees your people took out. The woman whose name is on the paper in his hand, her name is Odette Vane. Vane, it is not a hard name, and nobody in the city has said it out loud in 40 years. She never left this courtyard, I said. I'm not going to ask any of you to believe that. Then I turned and faced the front door of my own building and said her name again, where 200 people could hear it. I had spent 5 months keeping her name away from mine. The cold went first. 200 people felt it in the same second. You could hear the coats. A woman behind me made the small sound you make when you miss a stair. Then the light on the deck changed, not brighter, older. The banner stopped moving in a wind that had not stopped. She came out of the front door of Foxglove Court and down the 3 steps into her own courtyard. And everyone in the courtyard saw her. Everyone. The investors in the second row, the reporters, the boy holding the cable, the 4 men who had come to run the digger. She was not fog, and she was not a cold patch on a screen. She was a woman about my age with her hair pinned up, and she laid a shadow across the plywood. Dario had both cameras on her. His hands shook so badly that the second one is useless. The first one is not. She went up the steps. Marcus Harrow got out of her way like a man stepping off a curb and kept going back until the rail stopped him. He had told this city for 5 months she was a stunt. You could see the second that ended. I am Odette Vane, she said. Every person in that courtyard heard it. That is the part I cannot explain and will not try to. I was to be married here. I did not run. I have not been out of this courtyard since. She put her hand out to him and waited, the way you wait for a child to give a thing back. He did not hand it to her. He stopped holding it, and it went out of his fingers into hers. She read it. It took a long time. 200 people stood in a courtyard on a working morning and made no sound while she read her own name off a page she never signed. That is not my hand, she said. She let it go. It went off the front of the stage and under the chairs, and nobody picked it up. She had been solid about 90 seconds. I watched the edges of her go, thin at the wrists first. Odette, I said. She looked at me and she was already going. Tell them I lived here. It took the last of her to say that. Then there was nothing on the stage but Marcus Harrow, a microphone, and a rail. He started a sentence. I do not know what the end of it was going to be. Halfway through it, the investors were walking to their cars, not running. Walking fast, in a tight group, phones already up. 2 came past me at the barrier. One said, to nobody. That was on camera. The other has not said anything since. Nobody dug anything. The stage came off the courtyard the next day in the rain. 4 men, 11 hours, and not one of them looked up at the building while they worked. I went up at 1:30, still in the apron I had put on at 5 without thinking about it. The stairwell smelled of nothing at all. I opened the door and the flat went silent. I mean that as a description of a room. Not of how I felt. Every door stood where I had left it. Nothing moved in that building except what I moved myself. I said her name in every room, twice in the bedroom. The landings were gray to the top of the house, and the banister was the temperature of the air. The kitchen was warm, not warm. Warmer, 2 degrees, maybe 3, and only near the hearth. There was a seam of red in it, about the size of a thumbnail, and no wood in the grate. I sat on the floor with my back against the warm side. After a while, a tin spoon on the counter turned a 1/4 of an inch. That was all night. Down on the street, and on the phone in my pocket, the city was learning to say her name. It got said more times before morning than in the 40 years standing in front of it. Upstairs, in her own house, she could not get it out once. I fed the ember what I had. Kindling. The leg off a chair I never liked. The last of the coal. It took all of it, and it did not get any bigger. It just stopped getting smaller. I cooked the next morning before I had decided to. 2 plates, out of habit more than hope, and a bowl of rice that nobody touched by noon. She used to do this for me before I knew her name. Onions, rice, a door that opened before I reached it, hot water before my hand found the tap. I was only paying it back now, in the same coin, with none of her advantages. The kitchen stayed the only warm room in the building. 2 degrees over the rest of it, maybe 3, and the ember held its size without growing for the better part of a week. I talked to her anyway, the way you talk to a stove that has gone out. Not because it answers, because silence in that kitchen felt like giving up on something I had never agreed to give up on. Mrs. Okafor came up on the 3rd day with a covered dish and did not stay to watch me eat it, which is her way of saying she knows exactly how bad a week has been. She left the pot and went back down 4 flights slower than she came up. Pell sent no message and needed to send none. He came by on the Tuesdays he has always come by, collected $1 that still buys the same door it always has, and asked after the boiler instead of after her, because he already knew better than to ask the second thing. I did not go back on the stream once that month, and Dario did not ask me to. He came up twice with nothing running, sat on the counter the way he used to when a theory was forming, and this time offered none. Some weeks a man just sits with you. Vance Okonkwo came up 4 flights on the Thursday of the second week, alone, in a coat that had stopped being a company coat somewhere between the courtyard and my door. "I'm not with Harrow Group anymore," he said. Before I had offered him a chair, he said it the way a man reports his own resignation to himself for the first time out loud. He told me his board called him finished before the week was out, not fired. Worse than fired. Quietly told there would be no vote in his favor if he made them hold one. The investors who walked out of the courtyard never came back to the phone, Vance said. Financing was dead, the block was off the demolition schedule, and the company was paying for the restoration now, out of its own account, with Marcus's name nowhere on the paperwork. I asked what that meant for Marcus personally. Vance thought about it longer than the question deserved. A reporter caught him on the pavement outside his own building on Tuesday, he said. Asked him straight out whether the haunting had always been a stunt. He didn't answer that, Vance said slowly, like a man still deciding what he had actually seen. He has answered that question the same way for 5 months. On Tuesday, he just stood there and let the silence be the answer instead. I asked Vance why he was telling me any of it. "Because you never asked me to lie about the pipes," he said, and stood up before I could offer him tea, the way a man leaves a job he has already quit twice in his own head. At the door he stopped and looked back down the hall, the way he had the first time he came up here with Marcus's gloves in his hand. "Building looks better than it did," he said. It was the only thing he said that whole visit that was not a fact he had come to deliver. I asked whether he had somewhere to go. He said an old firm had already called, one that does not build on other people's grief, and that he had said yes before he had finished hearing the offer out. "Good," I said, and meant it more than the word usually carries. That was a cooking day. Chicken thighs, good onions, bread I did not need to make from scratch but made anyway because my hands wanted the work. Nothing answered from the front rooms. The kitchen held its 2 degrees. I told her about Vance anyway, out loud, over the pan, because telling her things had become the only shape our conversations had left. On the 9th day, the pan lid moved half an inch on its own and settled back down before I had turned round fully. I did not make more of it than it was. It was not nothing either. My mother rang on a Sunday, the day she has always chosen for anything she wants to pretend is small. "Your father has something he wants read to you," she said, which from her is as close to warning as I get. He read it the way he pays a bill, flatly, like a man who has rehearsed not sounding rehearsed. "For 5 years we told a story about which of our sons we could be proud of," he said. "We were wrong about which one. Eli was never the failure we allowed people to believe he was," he said. "Julian's conduct over years, and confirmed on his own camera, was ours to answer for, and we did not. We are answering for it now, publicly, and it costs us exactly as much as it should." It went out to 2 papers that same afternoon, my mother said, under both their names. So they said it out loud, not with a check, the way I had told them plainly once, that it would need to be done. My father told me, separately, that the clause in his will naming Julian, sole heir to the house, had been rewritten that week to name me, alongside him, whether or not I ever touch $1 of it. I told him I would not. He said he knew, and had done it anyway, because it was true and not because he expected anything back. Then, in the same call, the rest of it, delivered the way she delivers anything she has decided is smaller than it is. Rosalind saw the footage, my mother said. The venue camera, Julian giving the order, the girl doing exactly what she was told. She left him inside a week. "He is not taking it well," my mother said. "And nobody in that house is comforting him about it anymore. Seraphine is not Julian's alone now either," she said. The family released her from exclusive service and told her she could stay in a smaller way, or ask to serve no one at all. My mother's voice did something on that sentence I had never heard it do about anyone who works in that house. I did not ask what Seraphine had chosen. My mother did not know yet either, and for once neither of us pretended otherwise. "Is that everything?" I asked her, because 5 years of these calls have taught me there is always a last item saved for the end. There was. "Julian has been moved off client-facing work at the firm," she said quietly, the way you report a demotion in a family that has never once used that word about itself. I did not ask whether he knew I would hear about it before the week was out. Some things a mother tells you precisely because she wants you to know she chose to. I thanked her, which surprised us both, and she asked in the smallest voice she owns whether I would ever bring Odette's name up again in that house. Only if you ask me to, I said. She said she might, one day, and I let her have the maybe. That was another cooking day, longer than the others. I told Odette all of it, plainly, the way I would read her a bill. She did not answer, and the kitchen held its 2 degrees exactly, no more and no less. In the 4th week, a van pulled up outside the gate with the restoration company's name on the side, paid for, as promised, by the very firm that had tried to bring the roof down on all of us. They fixed the guttering, reset 3 window frames, and on the last morning a man in a harness set the plaque with her name on it into the brick beside the street door, where anyone coming or going would have to read it. Odette Vane, it said, and a pair of dates, and nothing about a wedding or a fire or any of the rest of it. I stood on the pavement and read it twice before I went back up. Mrs. Okafor came out onto her step to look at it too, arms folded the way they always are, and stood there long enough that the workman asked if the lettering was wrong. It is not wrong, she told him. It is only 40 years late, and went back inside before he could apologize for something that was never his to be sorry for. I told her about the plaque that night, over rice, the way I had told her about everything else that month. For once, I did not expect anything back. Some news is just news. The following evening, I was at the stove with my back to the room, the way I have stood at that stove more nights than I have counted, when the kitchen said my name. Not the way the flat usually says things, in a fog on a window or a spoon turning on a counter. A voice, hers, thin as the last inch of a candle, from the chair by the warm side of the hearth. Illy. I did not turn round straight away. I did not trust my own hearing before I trusted my own legs. When I did turn, she was looking at the pan, not at me, the way you look at something ordinary when you are not ready to be looked at back yourself. It was the only word she had managed since the morning the courtyard learned her name. And she said one word in the kitchen and stopped, spent by it the way a whole sentence would have spent her a month ago. I did not ask for a second one. I put the rice down, pulled out the chair across from her, and set a place. The way I had set a place every night for a month, whether or not anybody sat in it. It is not enough to call it recovered. She could not lift a spoon that evening and did not try. But the kitchen had answered me, once, in a voice instead of a temperature. And after 4 weeks of feeding a room that fed nothing back, that was the whole of what I needed to keep going. Part 18. Her first whole sentence came back on a Tuesday, and it was a complaint. Too much bay in the stock. I said bay was free. She said nothing in this house is free. Then she had to sit down for a while. After that, it came back the way money does. Small amounts, unevenly, spent the same day they arrive. On Friday, she counted my spoons out loud and got as far as 9. The rooms warmed in the order I used them. Kitchen, then the hall, then the front room with the window. The back bedroom stayed gray into the 2nd month, and neither of us mentioned it. I cooked twice a day whether or not anything came back across the table. 2 plates, 2 chairs, the same as my first week in that building. It is the only skill I own that has never let me down. She can hold a door shut now for about as long as it takes to boil an egg. She used to be able to empty a corridor. She said she had spent it on the right night and was not asking for a refund. The folder had been sitting under the salt cellar since the spring, going yellow at one corner. On the Sunday, I moved the salt off it and asked her what day suited her. She said I should wait for the ground floor to open, see how a full room felt. See how I liked being looked at by a whole street every night, and then decide who I wanted at the end of it. I said the street had been looking at me for the best part of a year already. She said a year is not a life. She said it flatly, the way you say a number you have already checked. So I did the arithmetic out loud, because that is how I say things. No door out, no clause for changing my mind. A home I never get to leave. A wife who will look this age when I am 70. She made me say the last one again, slower, in case I had said it without thinking. I have never signed anything without reading it. Thursday, I said. Thursday suits me. Pell came up the 4 flights on Thursday morning, refused Dario's arm twice, and took it the 3rd time. He carried the folder in a bag from a shop that shut when I was at school. He brought his own pen. Mrs. Okafor came up with a covered dish and could not be talked out of witnessing. Dario stood at my left shoulder with his hands empty, which is where a best man stands, and his bag by the door with the zip done up. Pell read the terms in his own language, the party of the first part being the undersigned living signatory, the party of the second part being the resident of 4B, hereafter and throughout, the bride. Is there a version of that in English? Dario said. Pell told him this was the English one, that he had waited 40 years to be asked a proper question, and that he intended to read all of it. Then he said it plainly to the 2 of us. Voluntary on both sides. A living signatory, for my life. Nothing in it undone by either party or by me leaving or by anybody deciding later that it is unhealthy. It does not give her the street, he said. This building, the courtyard, the railing at the front. That is the whole world you are agreeing to. I said I had lived in worse and paid more for it. She asked whether it could be ended if I got tired of it. He said no. She asked whether that was a kindness. He said he had no opinion, he had a form, and the form has no box for kindness. Consideration, he said. Every contract needs it. Something has to pass one way or the other, or this is a wish with 2 signatures on it. $1. In exchange for what exactly? I have to write it in. Nobody spoke for a second. Mrs. Okafor said to put dinner. Odette said to put that I stay. I said to put that she stays. Pell wrote down both, and then he did the thing I have never seen him do. He volunteered something. $1 is not a price, he said. $1 is what you write down when the thing has no price, and the paper still needs a number in the box. I signed first, and I knew what I was buying and what it was costing me. The first $1 bought me somewhere to be. This one buys her the same thing, off me for as long as I last. Then the pen went across the table on its own. Mrs. Okafor said the name of her God once. Dario sat down on the floor where he was standing and stayed there. The writing took a long time. She had not held a pen since 1986, and she would not let me steady her hand. Odette Vane. Both names, hers, on a paper that says she is not going anywhere. Pell notarized it. He pressed the stamp down like a man setting down a bag he has carried too far to look at. Then he closed the folder and put both hands flat on top of it. Keep the house tenanted until the bride is home. That is the whole of what I was given, he said. And I have not been allowed to say it out loud since before you were born. He looked straight at the chair she was in, which he does not do. She's home, he said. I'm finished. Then he asked whether, being finished, he might be invited to dinner sometimes, and Mrs. Okafor answered before I could. The ring had been in its box on the shelf over the stove since we opened the wall. I got it down, and the room went quiet without being asked to. I asked which hand. Left, she said, 4th finger. What Dario saw was a gold band leave my palm and stop in the air at the height of a hand. He has told that story 20 times since, and still gets it wrong. He says it floated. It was put on. What I saw was that she wore the ring. She turned her hand over twice to check it was really there. It fit. Nobody said anything for a while, and then Mrs. Okafor started uncovering her dish. We opened the doors downstairs at 6 the same evening, because the food was bought and I do not throw out food. 26 seats, 7 tables, 1 stove. Mrs. Okafor's stew went on the board under her own name. By 6:30, the queue went round to the corner. 2 of the people at the front had told me, my first week here, to sleep with the light on. Nobody came for the food that night. They came for the house. Dario ran the room in a shirt he had bought that afternoon and lost 3 orders in the first hour. He is a producer, not a waiter. By 9, he had the whole room by heart. Mondays are his now. Stove and menu both. By the window, there is a table kept for 2. Both places laid, 1 chair drawn out, the cloth changed like every other cloth in the room. It is never cleared and it is never given away, and yes, people ask. A man in a very good coat offered me $40 for it at the end of the first service. I told him it was taken. He looked round at a full room with no empty chairs in it, and paid for a seat at the bar. Sam turned up at 8 with his bike over his shoulder, and no delivery bag, which I had never seen before. He stood in the doorway a long time, looking at the laid table, before he said anything at all. Order for 2, he said. Every ticket since your first week. Every single one. Who was the second one for? Nobody had ever asked me straight out, so I told him her name and where she was standing. He got his wallet out and showed me the coin pocket. 3 quarters and a dime, all older than he is, change he'd been carrying for months and never spent. Nobody tips exact, he said. I fed him at the end of the bar, and he ate it watching that table. My parents came at 8:30. I had invited them by card, the same card the fishmonger got and the woman who does the bins, and I put them on table 4. It is a decent table with a draft. My mother read the board twice and asked what she ought to have. I said the chicken. She had the chicken. My father asked what the room used to be, and I said a laundry, and then their food came. Near the end, she said Julian had asked whether he ought to come. I said we are full most nights, and he can book like anybody else. She said she would tell him, and wrote the number on the back of her hand. My father asked for the bill, and he paid it. $61. He left the tip on the cloth instead of on the card, because that is the only sentence he knows how to say. I said out loud what it was. A tip, from a customer. My mother stood in the doorway a minute after he had gone down the steps, looking back at a full room, doing sums. I know that face. I have had it my whole life. I locked up at 11, put the chairs on the tables, and did not go straight upstairs. She was at the laid table with both hands flat on the cloth, We had said everything worth saying that morning in front of a notary with a stamp on it, so neither of us made a speech. Are you tired? She said. I said no. She said good. I put my hand over hers and it was warm, not cool, not the temperature of a window in October. Warm, like a person who has spent an evening in a room with a stove going. The hearth, she said before I could ask. 4 months of you feeding it. She turned her hand over under mine and held on, and it cost her nothing at all. We went up the 4 flights with the lights off behind us. She got to the landing first, which she has not managed since the spring, and stood there laughing at me for being slow. The door of 4B has never once needed help closing. I have written down everything else in this. That one is ours. In the morning, the lease was on the kitchen table where the folder used to live, and it had been amended again in a bride's hand. She has appalling handwriting for a woman who kept books. The rent had gone up. It had been 2 dinners a week since my first spring in that building. It now reads, 2 dinners a week, one of them downstairs at the window table, with the door locked. Term, his life. I initialed under her initials, which is the correct way to accept an amendment, and Pell is the man who taught me that. Then, I added the only clause I have ever put on a piece of paper in my life. The resident will not be asked to leave. I initialed that as well, put the kettle on, and asked what she wanted at the window table on Sunday, and she said surprise her. And that was the whole negotiation. I am 27, and I hold a lease I cannot break, a stove that isn't mine, a business with no name over the door, and a wife nobody else can see. I have never in my life been better paid. The table by the window stays laid. 2 places, 1 chair drawn out, no card in the slot where the card goes. People see it empty on a wet Tuesday in a packed room and they ask. The answer never changes. It's taken.
This story is about the gap between being kept and being chosen. Eli spent his life priced by people who owed him nothing, a family that valued convenience over him, buyers who valued his silence over his home. The one thing nobody ever tried to buy, a $1 a month lease with a stranger's condition attached, turned out to be the only thing ever given to him with no price on it. The lesson, what someone is worth, isn't set by what others can afford to offer them. It is set by what somebody chooses to give up for them, in public, when it actually costs something.